Hey everyone. Tonight, we are diving into a story that really makes you question the casual connections we make in our digital world. It is about how easily the lines between coincidence and calculation can blur, and how the comfort of your own home can become the most terrifying place on earth. This is Sarah's story, and it begins like so many modern tales with a swipe. But the truth, as Sarah would soon discover, started long before that. My name is Sarah, and I am I am just me. 28 years old, living in a decent little apartment in the city, working a pretty standard marketing job. My life, honestly, was about as unremarkable as it gets. I had my routine's coffee at the corner shop on Elm Street every morning, gym 3 times a week, Friday night takeout, and a movie. Saturdays were for errands, maybe a brunch with friends. Sundays were for laundry and dreading Monday. You know the drill, like a lot of people my age. I dipped my toes into the online dating pool from time to time. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, I would have them all at one point or another. Mostly it was just noise. Awkward conversations, bad first dates, the occasional decent connection that fizzled out. Nothing to write home about. Nothing that ever made me think my life was about to become a horror movie. Looking back now, with the benefit of hindsight, that cruel, crystal clear lens, I can see the threads. The tiny, almost imperceptible tugs at the fabric of my everyday life. The moments that, at the time, I brushed off as coincidence, as my own overactive imagination, as just life. But they were not. They were the first whispers of something truly sinister, echoing in the quiet corners of my unremarkable existence. It started subtly, maybe 2 or 3 months before everything really fell apart. A feeling. You know that feeling, right? That prickle on the back of your neck, like someone's watching you, even when you are alone. I would be walking home from the grocery store, headphones in, minding my own business, and suddenly I would feel it. A flicker of movement in my peripheral vision, a sense of an unseen gaze. I would whip my head around, and there'd be nothing. Just the usual city bustle, strangers passing by, absorbed in their own worlds. I would shrug it off. Paranoia. Sarah, you are just tired. Then there were the small things around my apartment. My front gate, for example. It is a wrought iron gate, a bit old, and sometimes it does not quite latch properly. I would always make sure it was secure when I left for work, giving it a good tug. But a couple of times, I would come home, and it would be slightly ajar. Not wide open, just unlatched. I would assume it was the wind, or maybe I had not pulled it hard enough that morning. I even blamed the neighborhood kids once or twice, though I would never actually seen them mess with it. My trash cans, too. I kept them neatly tucked against the side of my building. One morning, I found the recycling bin moved a good 3 feet away, sitting right in the middle of the narrow path leading to my back door. It was heavy, full of glass bottles and cardboard. No way the wind did that. I remember standing there, staring at it, a tiny knot forming in my stomach. But again, I rationalized it. Maybe the sanitation workers had been a bit careless. Maybe a stray animal had knocked it. Anything to avoid the unsettling alternative. The sightings began around the same time. Not a specific person at first, just a car, a silver sedan. It was a common model, nothing distinctive, but I started noticing it. First, parked a few blocks from my apartment when I was walking to the gym. Then, a week later, I saw it again in the parking lot of the supermarket I frequented. I remember thinking, small world. A few days after that, as I was leaving my coffee shop, it drove past, slowly. I did not think anything of it. Plenty of silver sedans in the city. It was just a car. Then came the man. He was unremarkable. Average height, dark hair, glasses. The kind of face that blends into a crowd. The first time I noticed him, he was sitting at a table outside my coffee shop, reading a book. I barely registered him. The second time, he was a few aisles away from me in the grocery store, looking at the same brand of cereal. I remember he glanced up, and our eyes met for a split second. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, and I gave a polite, equally tiny nod back. I thought, oh, that guy again. He must live in the neighborhood. The third time was when I started to feel a flicker of unease. I was at the park, jogging my usual loop. He was sitting on a bench, facing the path, reading the same book. I think, when I passed him the second time, I felt his eyes on me. It was not an aggressive stare, more observant, like he was studying me. I picked up my pace, my heart thumping a little faster than it should have been for a casual jog. I told my friend, Chloe, about it over drinks one night. There is this guy. I said, trying to make light of it. He is just everywhere. Coffee shop, gym, grocery store, now the park. It is getting a little weird. Chloe laughed. He probably thinks you are stalking him. Seriously. Sarah, it is a small city. You have routines. He probably has routines. It is bound to happen. And that was it. Chloe's logical explanation was exactly what I needed to hear. It made sense. I was being silly. I was probably just noticing him more because I would notice him once before. Our brains are wired like that, right? Pattern recognition. It was not a pattern, it was just me. So I stopped thinking about it. Or rather, I tried to, but the little things kept happening. A faint smell of cologne near my front door when I knew no one had been there. A shadow shifting outside my window late at night, dismissed as a tree branch. The silver sedan, always just out of full view, always there. I started to develop a low-level hum of anxiety, a constant, almost imperceptible thrum beneath the surface of my daily life. It was like living with a faint, persistent headache, not debilitating, but always there, reminding you something is not quite right. Then came the match. It was a Tuesday evening. I was curled up on my couch, scrolling through Tinder, half-heartedly swiping left on most profiles. My finger paused on a picture of a guy named Mark. He was smiling, a friendly, open smile, dark hair, glasses the same kind of glasses that guy I kept seeing wore. But I did not make the connection. Not then. I was just thinking, okay, he is cute. Decent bio, too. It mentioned a love for indie films, hiking, and trying new coffee shops. Sounded normal. I swiped right. A second later, it is a match, flashed across my screen. Mark had swiped right on me too. We started chatting. He was easy to talk to. His messages were thoughtful, engaging, and he asked good questions. He seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. We talked about our jobs, our hobbies, our favorite spots in the city. He mentioned he lived a few neighborhoods over, which was convenient. After a few days of back and forth, he asked me out for coffee. I agreed. There's this great little place on Elm Street. He typed, "Do you know it?" My heart did a tiny flutter. That was my coffee shop, the one I went to every single morning. I do. I typed back a little too enthusiastically. I love that place. Perfect, he replied. See you there Friday, 7 p.m. Friday evening rolled around. I was actually a little excited. Mark seemed like a genuinely nice guy, and it had been a while since I would have had a first date that felt promising. I walked into the coffee shop, scanning the faces, and there he was, sitting at a small table near the window, nursing a black coffee. The same man I would see at the grocery store, at the park, outside this very coffee shop. My stomach dropped. A cold wave of nausea washed over me. It was him, the silver sedan guy, the ubiquitous presence. He looked up, saw me, and his face lit up with that same friendly smile from his Tinder profile. He stood up as I approached, pulling out a chair for me. "Sarah, hey, great to finally meet you in person." His voice was warm, smooth. I managed a strained smile. "Hi, Mark. You too." I sat down, trying to steady my breathing. Okay, Sarah, calm down. It is a coincidence. A really, really big coincidence. But still, he probably just recognized you from the app or from seeing you around. The date started off well, normal. He was charming, engaging, just like in our chats. He made me laugh. He asked about my work, my interests. We talked about movies, books, travel. He seemed genuinely interested, and I found myself relaxing a little, pushing the unsettling feeling to the back of my mind. Maybe Chloe was right. Maybe it was just a small world. Then he started talking about the coffee shop. So, you come here often, he asked, taking a sip of his coffee. Yeah, pretty much every morning. I said, trying to sound casual. It is my go-to. He nodded, a knowing glint in his eye. I figured, you always get the same thing. Do not you? A large oat milk latte, extra shot. My breath hitched. My smile faltered. How did you know that? I asked, my voice suddenly a little shaky. I did not post my coffee order on social media. I did not even tell my friends my exact order. He chuckled, a low, easy sound that suddenly felt chilling. Oh, I am observant. Plus, I have been in here a few times myself. Seen you around. He waved a dismissive hand. It is a popular place. Observant. That word echoed in my head. The conversation continued, but now I was on high alert. Every word he spoke, every casual observation, felt like a trap. So, you are a big reader, right? He asked, leaning forward slightly. I saw you at the bookstore last Tuesday. Picked up anything good? Last Tuesday. I had been at the bookstore last Tuesday. I would spend a good hour browsing the new releases. I had not posted about it anywhere. I had not even told anyone I was going. I stammered. I picked up that new psychological thriller, The Silent Patient. He smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that did not quite reach his eyes. Ah, a classic. Good choice. I almost picked that one up myself. You were looking at it for a while, debating between that and the latest Colleen Hoover. My blood ran cold. The air in the coffee shop suddenly felt thick, suffocating. He knew the exact two books I would have been deliberating between. He had not just seen me, he would have been watching me. He would have been close. I forced a laugh, a dry, hollow sound. Wow, you really are observant. Mark, that is pretty impressive. Just paying attention, he said, his eyes still fixed on mine, that unsettling glint still there. It is a good quality in a person, do not you think, to really see someone. The rest of the date was a blur of forced politeness and escalating panic on my part. I made an excuse about having an early morning and cut it short. He walked me my car, and I could feel his gaze on me the entire time. When I got into my car, I locked the doors immediately, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the keys. I did not look back as I drove away, but I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that he was watching me go. I did not sleep that night. Every casual interaction, every coincidence, every fleeting feeling of being watched rushed back to me with a horrifying clarity. The gate unlatched, the trash bin moved, the faint smell of cologne, the silver sedan, the man, Mark. He had not just seen me around. He had been following me for weeks, maybe months. He knew my routine. He knew my coffee order. He knew what books I looked at in the bookstore. He had orchestrated our match on Tinder, knowing I would eventually swipe right on him because he had carefully cultivated a profile that he knew would appeal to me based on his weeks of observation. He had been lurking in the shadows of my life, a silent, unseen predator, gathering information, waiting for the perfect moment to insert himself. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was not just on a bad date, I had been targeted. My seemingly ordinary life had been meticulously observed, dissected, and then invaded. The casual connections I made online, which I thought were my choice, had been manipulated. The next morning, I was a wreck. I called Chloe, my voice shaking. I poured out everything: the sightings, the gate, the trash, the date, the specific details Mark had known. Chloe listened, her voice growing increasingly concerned. Sarah, that is not okay. That is really messed up. Messed up is an understatement. Chloe, he was watching me before we even matched. He engineered this whole thing. Okay. First, block him. Everywhere. Tinder, phone, social media. Everything. I did. It felt like a small act of defiance against a looming threat, but it did not make me feel safe. He already knew where I lived. He knew my routine. Blocking him online felt like closing a door after the intruder was already inside. I spent the next few days in a state of hypervigilance. Every shadow was a potential threat. Every car that passed my apartment sent a jolt of fear through me. I checked my locks obsessively. I pulled my blinds shut the moment the sun went down. My apartment, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage, a fishbowl where I was constantly on display. I even went to the police. They listened politely, took notes, but without any direct threats, without any physical evidence of crime. Their hands were tied. MS. Hayes, the officer said, his tone sympathetic but firm. It sounds incredibly unsettling, and I understand your fear. But he has not technically done anything illegal. He just knows a lot about you, which, while creepy, is not a crime in itself. We can file a report, but there is not much we can do unless he escalates. Unless he escalates. The words hung in the air, a chilling prophecy. And escalate he did. The first sign was a few days later. I came home from work, and as I walked to my front path, I noticed something on my doorstep, a small, neatly wrapped package. My heart pounded. I had not ordered anything. I had not received any mail that day. Cautiously, I picked it up. It was a small, artisanal blend of Earl Grey tea, my favorite brand, the one I only ever bought from a specific specialty store downtown. A brand I had never mentioned to Mark or anyone online. Inside the package, tucked beneath the tea, was a small, handwritten note. The handwriting was neat, elegant. I hope you enjoy this. Sarah, I know how much you love a good cup of tea after a long day. You look tired today. Take care. No signature. No name. Just the implicit, terrifying knowledge that he had been watching me, had seen me come home, had known exactly what I liked, and had left this chilling gift. I dropped the package as if it were on fire. My legs gave out, and I sank to the ground, my back against my front door, tears streaming down my face. He was not just watching me from afar anymore. He was coming to my door. He was entering my space. Panic gave way to a cold, hard resolve. I could not live like this. I contacted a private security company the next morning. They installed motion sensor lights, a doorbell camera, and reinforced the locks on my windows and doors. They even suggested I get a dog, but I was not ready for that kind of commitment. The security system was expensive, but the peace of mind, however fleeting, was worth it. For a few days, things were quiet. Too quiet. The silence was heavy, pregnant with unspoken dread. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time I heard a noise outside, I froze. I'd barely left my apartment, working from home, ordering groceries for delivery. I was a prisoner in my own home, even with the new security. Then the messages started, not from Mark directly, because I had blocked him, but from burner numbers. Text messages that contained fragments of my daily life. Nice new lights. They won't keep me out forever. Your cat, Mittens, is very cute. She seems lonely without you at work. Mittens was an indoor cat. How did he know her name? Had he been inside? You really should not leave your window open, even just a crack on the second floor. It is an invitation. I had left my bedroom window open a crack that morning, just for a few minutes, to air out the room after my shower. It was on the second floor, facing away from the street. An invitation. He was not just watching from the street. He was closer. Much, much closer. I called the police again, showing them the text, the T. They took it more seriously this time, giving me a case number, promising to patrol my street more frequently. But they still could not definitively prove it was Mark, and the texts were from untraceable numbers. They advised me to be vigilant, to keep all doors and windows locked, and to call 911 immediately if I saw him or felt threatened. That night was the worst. I was sitting in my living room, the lights on, trying to distract myself with a book, but my eyes kept darting to the windows. The security system was armed, the doorbell camera on. Every creak of the old building made me jump. Around midnight, a notification flashed on my phone motion detected at front door. My heart leaped into my throat. I grabbed my phone, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped it. I opened the app, pulling up the live feed from the doorbell camera. The image was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. Standing on my porch, directly in front of my door, was Mark. He was not moving. He was just standing there, facing the camera, his hands tucked into his pockets. He wore a dark hoodie, the hood pulled up, but I could clearly see his face, illuminated by the faint glow of my porch light. He was not smiling. His expression was utterly blank. His eyes, though, were fixed on the camera lens, as if he knew I was watching, as if he was staring directly into my soul. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised one hand. He pressed his palm flat against my front door. Just for a moment, a silent, chilling message. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. The motion sensor stopped, and the feed went back to showing an empty porch. I did not call the police. I could not. I was paralyzed by terror. What would I even say? He stood on my porch and touched my door. They would tell me to call if he tried to break in. But the message was clear. He could get to me. He was telling me he could. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my bed, a kitchen knife clutched in my hand, the covers pulled up to my chin, listening to every sound. Every shadow that danced across my walls seemed to take on a malevolent shape. I did not sleep a wink. The next morning, I packed a bag. I called Chloe. I can't stay here anymore. I whispered, my voice raw. I can't. He was at my door last night. He is sending me messages. I can't live like this. Chloe, bless her heart, did not hesitate. Come to my place. Sarah, right now, I will help you figure things out. I drove to Chloe's. My rear view mirror constantly checked for the silver sedan. I felt like a fugitive, fleeing my own life. Living at Chloe's provided a temporary reprieve from the immediate terror, but the psychological damage was done. Every time I heard a car outside, every time I saw a man with dark hair and glasses, my heart would seize up. I started seeing therapists, trying to untangle the knot of paranoia and fear that had become my constant companion. The police did eventually get involved more seriously. With my new security footage of Mark on my porch and the consistent pattern of harassment, they issued a warrant for his arrest. They found him a few days later, living in a small apartment a few neighborhoods over, just like he would said, in his apartment. They found a chilling collection printouts of my social media profiles, a meticulously detailed schedule of my daily routine, photos of me taken from a distance, and even a small, framed photo of me leaving my coffee shop, taken weeks before we ever matched on Tinder. He had even kept a small journal, detailing his observations of me, his plan to meet me, and his excitement when I swiped right. It was a terrifying testament to the depth of his obsession. Mark was charged with stalking and harassment. The legal process was long and arduous. He claimed he was just observing me, that he was interested in me, that he loved me. He did not see anything wrong with what he did. That was the most terrifying part, his complete lack of remorse, his inability to understand the terror he had inflicted. He was eventually convicted and sentenced, but the sentence felt like a slap on the wrist for the permanent damage he had done to my sense of safety and trust. I never moved back into my old apartment. I could not. The memories were too strong, the feeling of violation too pervasive. I sold it and moved to a different part of the city, hoping for a fresh start. But some scars never truly heal. Every time I swipe on a dating app, a cold dread washes over me. Every time I meet someone new, I find myself scrutinizing them, searching for the telltale signs of someone who knows too much. The world feels like a more dangerous place now, full of unseen eyes and hidden agendas. Sarah's story is a stark reminder that in our hyper-connected world, the line between harmless interest and dangerous obsession can be terrifyingly thin. It reminds us that sometimes the most mundane details of our lives can be weaponized against us, and that the monsters are not always in the shadows sometimes. They're just a swipe away, waiting to introduce themselves. And sometimes they have been waiting for a very long time. You know, sometimes I wonder if there's a cosmic joke being played on people like me. People who just want to live their quiet lives, maybe find a little connection, a little bit of normal. Because for a while there, I thought I was finally getting back to normal. My name's Alex. I am a pretty average guy. Work a decent job in it. Live in a decent apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. After a particularly messy breakup a year or so ago, I would kind of retreated into myself. Spent a lot of evenings with takeout and Netflix, weekend mornings with a book and a strong cup of coffee. But eventually, the loneliness started to gnaw. My friends, bless their hearts, kept telling me to get back out there. Alex, you're a good guy. Get on the apps. What is the worst that could happen? Famous last words, right? So, about 3 months ago, I finally caved. Re-downloaded a couple of those dating apps. Polished up my profile. Swiped right on a few. Swiped left on a lot. It was exactly what you would expect. A lot of bland conversations. A few awkward first dates that went nowhere. I was starting to think maybe I was just destined for a life of solo movie nights. Then I matched with Lena. Her profile immediately caught my eye. She was stunning in that effortlessly cool way. Dark, wavy hair. Piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold a hint of mischief. Her bio was witty, smart, and she had a love for obscure indie films, which instantly piqued my interest. But it was not just her looks or her bio that made me pause. It was her main profile photo. It was a selfie, taken in what looked like a really modern, minimalist living room. Sunlight streamed in through a large window, illuminating a sleek, gray sofa and a potted monstera plant in the corner. And that is when a little alarm bell, faint at first, started to ring in the back of my head. That living room, that specific shade of gray on the sofa, the way the light hit the wall, the style of the window frame, it looked familiar, too familiar. I stared at it for a good minute, my thumb hovering over the screen. No, it could not be. It was just a common aesthetic, right? Lots of new apartment complexes have similar layouts, similar furniture packages if they are staged. My own apartment, while not identical, shared some of those modern, clean lines. I lived in a pretty big complex called the Lofts at Willow Creek. It had hundreds of units spread across several buildings. It was entirely possible, even probable, that someone else's apartment just happened to look a bit like mine. I rationalized it away. Swiped right. We matched instantly. Our initial texts were great. She was engaging, funny, and our conversation flowed easily. We talked about movies, books, even shared a few funny stories about our terrible past dating experiences. I found myself genuinely excited. This felt different. This felt promising. But that photo kept nagging at me. Every time I went back to her profile to read a message or look at her other pictures, my eyes would invariably drift to that main shot. The more I looked, the more specific details started to jump out. the texture of the throw blanket on the sofa, the specific design of the coffee table, the faint reflection of what looked like a modern art print on the wall opposite her. It was uncanny. It was like looking at a slightly altered version of my own living room. One evening, I was sitting on my own gray sofa, scrolling through my phone, and her profile popped up again. I looked up, then down at the picture. My monstera plant, sitting in its ceramic pot by the window, looked almost identical to the one in her photo. The light from my window, hitting the far wall, it was the same. A chill, a very faint one, traced its way down my spine. I tried to shake it off. Come on, Alex, you are being paranoid. It is a popular plant. It is a common apartment design. You are just looking for trouble because you are nervous about a good match. I decided to try and verify it. Subtly, in our text, I mentioned living at the lofts. I waited to see if she would say something. She did not explicitly, anyway. She just said, "Oh, nice. I love that area. I am pretty close by too. Vague. Too vague. Or perfectly normal." We agreed to meet for coffee that Saturday. My favorite spot, a little independent place called the Daily Grind, just a few blocks from my complex. I was genuinely excited, but also a little on edge. That week, the coincidences started to pile up. Small things at first. Things I could still explain away, but that slowly chipped away at my rationalizations. I would be heading to the gym in my building, and I would see her walking out. She would give a friendly smile, a quick wave. "Hey, Alex, fancy seeing you here." And I would smile back, feeling a weird mix of pleasant surprise and a growing sense of unease. The lofts is 2 gyms, one in each main building. I always used the one in my building. Building B. She would always be coming out of that one. Then, I would be walking my trash down to shoot on my floor, and I would see her waiting for the elevator. Again, a friendly greeting. "Hi, Alex, on your way out?" "No, just taking out the trash." And I would wonder, what was she doing on my floor? My floor, the 5th floor, was pretty quiet. Most residents kept to themselves. I started paying closer attention. I would see her in the parking garage, getting into a sleek silver sedan. I would seen that car before. A few spaces down from mine. I just had not connected it to anyone in particular. Now, the connection felt like a tightening knot in my stomach. My rational brain was screaming. She lives in your complex. Alex, of course you're going to see her. It is a huge place. But another part of me, a colder, quieter part, was whispering. But where in the complex? And why does it always feel like she is just there? The day of our coffee date arrived. I dressed carefully, trying to look casual but put together. My heart was doing a nervous little jig in my chest. I was genuinely looking forward to it, despite the creeping weirdness. Maybe, I thought, once I met her in person, all these silly anxieties would just melt away. I would laugh about how paranoid I would been. I got to the Daily Grind a few minutes early, ordered my usual, a large black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Found a small table by the window and waited. She walked in exactly on time. And she was even more beautiful in person. She spotted me, her eyes lit up, and she came straight over, a warm smile on her face. "Alex, so good to finally meet you." Her voice was soft, a little husky, and perfectly charming. "Lena, great to meet you too," I said, standing up. We shook hands. Her grip was firm. She sat down opposite me. "So, you have already got your coffee." "I see," she said, gesturing to my cup. Large black, no sugar, no cream. Classic. My smile faltered. My stomach did a full-on flip. I would just ordered it. I had not told her my order. We had not talked about coffee preferences beyond a general love for the stuff. Yeah. I stammered, trying to sound nonchalant. You remembered. She chuckled, a light, airy sound. Oh, I pay attention. Besides, it is a good choice. My brother drinks his coffee the exact same way. A plausible explanation. A little too plausible. My internal alarm bells went from a faint ding to a full-blown siren. The conversation started easily enough. She asked about my work, my hobbies. I asked about hers. She was a graphic designer, worked from home. That explained why I saw her around the complex so much. I supposed. Then she said, "So, I was thinking about that sci-fi movie you mentioned, Arrival. You said you would. Just watched it again last week, right? It is such a great film. I love how it plays with time. My blood ran cold. I had watched Arrival again last week, on a Tuesday evening, alone in my apartment. I had mentioned it to her in passing, a few days ago, as one of my favorite films. But I had not mentioned when I would watched it. Definitely not that it was again last week. I gripped my coffee cup a little tighter. Yeah, it is a classic. Really makes you think. I tried to keep my voice even. How did you know I would watch it again last week? She smiled a little too brightly. Oh, I think you mentioned it. Or maybe it was in your profile. I can't remember. I just have a good memory for details. No, I had not mentioned it in my profile, and I was pretty sure I had not mentioned when I would watch it in our texts. I was meticulous about what I shared online. I had to be. My job involved security. The rest of the date was a blur of forced smiles from me and perfectly charming conversation from her. Every compliment felt like a subtle probe. Every shared interest felt like a carefully placed trap. I felt like a deer caught in headlights, trying to pretend everything was normal while my internal monologue was screaming. When we finally parted ways, she gave me a warm hug. I had a really great time. Alex, we should definitely do this again. Yeah, absolutely, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. But all I wanted to do was run. Run back to my apartment, lock the door, and hide under my bed. I walked home in a daze. The sun was shining. People were out and about, but the world felt muted, distant. My apartment complex, which had always felt like a sanctuary, now loomed like a cage. The first thing I did when I got back to my unit was open her profile again. I zoomed in on that main photo. And this time, I was not just looking for similarities. I was looking for proof. And I found it. In the background, barely visible on a small side table next to the sofa, was a book. It was slightly out of focus, but the spine was distinctive. It was a first edition of a specific science fiction novel. Dune, with a very particular cover art. A gift from my dad. It sat on my side table, next to my gray sofa, in my living room. My blood ran cold. My hands started to tremble. It was not just similar. It was my apartment. Her profile. Picture was taken inside my living room. How? When panic, raw and visceral, clawed its way up my throat. I stumbled backward, bumping into my own gray sofa. The same sofa. My eyes darted around the room. Every detail of her photo matched my living room, down to the small, almost imperceptible scratch on the coffee table that I would gotten moving furniture. She had not just seen me around. She had not just been watching me. She had been inside my home. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy with terror. I scrolled through our texts, looking for anything, any clue. Nothing. All perfectly normal. Then I remembered the silver sedan, my parking level, my floor, the gym. I rushed to my front door, checking the lock. Double locked. Always. I peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But what if it was not? What if she was just out of sight, waiting? My mind raced, trying to piece together a timeline. When could she have done this? I was rarely gone for long stretches. Work, errands, seeing friends. Then it hit me. The building maintenance. They had master keys for emergencies, for repairs. They always sent out notices when they needed to access apartments for inspections or planned work. I had not had any of those recently. But what if someone had gotten a hold of the key? Or what if she worked for the building? No, she would said she was a graphic designer, worked from home. I started to feel a profound sense of violation. My home, my sanctuary, had been breached, and by someone who had then meticulously crafted an online persona to lure me in. I blocked her number, blocked her on the dating app, deleted the app entirely. My hands were still shaking. I walked through my apartment, a new pair of eyes. Every shadow seemed deeper, every creak of the building more ominous. I checked my windows. Locked. The sliding door to my small balcony. Locked. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to get out, to leave. But where would I go? She knew where I lived. She had been inside. As I stood in my living room, heart pounding, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Did you have fun today? Alex, I know I did. You have such a lovely home. My breath hitched. My vision blurred for a moment. This was it. This was no coincidence. No misunderstanding. This was a direct threat. I did not reply. I just stared at the message, paralyzed by fear. Then another text came through, almost immediately. Do not worry. I am not going anywhere. We are practically neighbors, after all. And I just love that view from your balcony, especially at night. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering against my ribs. The view from my balcony. My balcony faced directly onto the complex's courtyard and, beyond that, the other buildings. It was a pretty private spot, or so I thought. I knew I needed to call the police. But what would I tell them? A woman I matched with on a dating app took a picture of my apartment, then texted me about it. It sounded crazy. It sounded like something out of a bad movie. But I had the text. I had her profile picture. And I had the undeniable proof that it was my apartment. I called 911. The dispatcher listened patiently, her voice calm and steady, which only made my own frantic words sound more pathetic. They sent an officer. When he arrived, I showed him everything. The picture, the texts. He looked at the photo, then at my living room, then back at the photo. His expression shifted from professional skepticism to a quiet, grim understanding. Okay, Mr. Davies, he said, his voice low. This is concerning. We will definitely open a report. Do you have any security cameras? Doorbell camera. No, I said, feeling stupid. I never thought I would need one. He nodded. Understood. Look, we will start by trying to identify this woman. Do you have her full name or anything else? Just Lena. And her profile said she works as a graphic designer. She drives a silver sedan, parks on my level in the garage. All right, we will check the building security footage if they have any for your floor, your parking level. We will also try to get a subpoena for her dating app information, though that can take a while. He took down my statement, filled out his report. He advised me to change my locks immediately and to stay somewhere else if I felt unsafe. Stay somewhere else. The thought was a relief, but also a fresh wave of terror. If she knew my apartment, knew my routine, what if she knew where I would go? I called my sister, Sarah. She lived about an hour away, in a different part of the state. Her voice was calm and reassuring, but I could hear the underlying concern. Of course. Alex, come here. Stay as long as you need. Packing was a nightmare. Every item I touched felt tainted. Every shadow in my apartment seemed to hold a lurking presence. I threw essentials into a duffel bag, my eyes darting nervously around the room. I felt a profound sense of urgency, a primal need to escape. As I was about to leave, I noticed something on my coffee table, a small, delicate white flower. It was not mine. I did not own any plants that produced flowers like that. It looked like a lily of the valley. My stomach lurched. It had not been there when I left for the coffee date. She had been back while I was out, while I was on a date with her. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. It was still fresh, slightly dewy. A calling card. A message. I took a picture of it, then dropped it into a Ziploc bag, carefully. Evidence. I practically ran out of my apartment, double locking the door behind me. The hallway felt like a tunnel, stretching endlessly. I did not wait for the elevator. I took the stairs 5 flights down, my heart pounding in my ears. As I sped out of the parking garage, I glanced in my rear-view mirror. No silver sedan, but a flicker of movement caught my eye. A figure in the window of a unit on the 3rd floor, looking down. I could not make out the face, but the hair was dark and wavy. Lena, or my paranoia. I pressed harder on the accelerator. I spent the next 2 weeks at Sarah's place. She was incredibly supportive, listening to my story again and again, offering comfort and practical advice. The police followed up. They checked the building security footage. They found Lena entering and exiting my building, and even my floor at various times. But she was always alone, always seemingly just going about her day. Nothing overtly criminal. They identified her. Lena Hayes. And yes, she lived in the lofts. Not in my building, but in Building C, 2 buildings over. She had a valid lease. Her job as a graphic designer checked out. They questioned her. She denied everything. Said she would never been in my apartment. Said the photo must have been an old one from a previous apartment that just happened to look similar. Said the texts were from a random number she would have been getting spam from. She even managed to sound offended, hurt, that I would accuse her, without a direct confession or more concrete evidence like fingerprints or a clear video of her breaking in. The police said their hands were tied. It was my word against hers. They advised me to get a restraining order, which I immediately filed for, but the damage was done. My sense of security was utterly shattered. I never went back to my apartment at the lofts. Not to live, anyway. I hired movers to pack up my things while I stayed at Sarah's. I could not bear the thought of being in that space again, knowing she had been there, knowing she had watched me. The lily of the valley, the one I would found on my coffee table. It was sent to the lab for fingerprint analysis. A week later, the results came back. A single, clear print was found on one of the petals. It matched Lena Hayes. That, combined with the text in the photo, was enough. The police finally had sufficient evidence. Lena Hayes was arrested. They found a journal in her apartment. Not just a journal, but a meticulously kept log of my life. My routines, my coffee order, the books I read, the movies I watched, the times I left for work, the times I came home. Even the specific brand of cereal I bought. It was all there, scrawled in neat handwriting, interspersed with photos she would taken of me from a distance. She had been watching me for months, not just from her apartment, but from hidden vantage points within the complex, from the parking garage, from the gym. She had somehow obtained a key or found a way to bypass my lock, and had been entering my apartment when I was out. The profile photo was just a final, chilling piece of her elaborate plan to insert herself into my life. Lena was convicted of stalking, breaking and entering, and harassment. She received a significant sentence. But even with her behind bars, the feeling never really leaves you. That cold, creeping dread. The knowledge that someone, a complete stranger, can decide to make your life their project. That your most private space can be invaded, your sense of safety systematically dismantled. I moved to a new city, started fresh, changed my number, my email, my social media presence. I am incredibly careful now. Every new connection, every friendly face is scrutinized. Every time I hear a floorboard creak in my new apartment, I freeze. Every time I see a silver sedan, my heart jumps. The world used to feel open, full of possibilities. Now it feels like a labyrinth, full of hidden eyes and silent threats. My ordinary life was invaded, and the scars remain. I am still trying to find my way back to normal, but I do not think I will ever truly feel safe again. Not completely, because you never know who is watching. You never know who is just around the corner. Or, worse, who is already inside. All right, so you know how it is these days, right? Dating apps. It is a jungle out there. For every decent human being, there are 10 weirdos, a handful of ghosts, and maybe, just maybe, one person who does not make you want to throw your phone across the room. I would been through my fair share of duds. Believe me. I am Sarah, by the way, and this story, well, it is about how I almost became another statistic. How I learned that the monsters are not always hiding under your bed. Sometimes they are sitting across from you at a nice restaurant, smiling, looking perfectly normal. It all started a little over a year ago. I was, I guess you could say, cautiously optimistic about finding someone. My last relationship had ended pretty messily, and after a few months of wallowing in ice cream and Netflix, my friends finally staged an intervention. Sarah, they said, you gotta get back out there. You are too good to be single forever. So, begrudgingly, I re-downloaded all the apps. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, the whole terrifying gauntlet. My profile was pretty standard, a few decent photos, a bio that tried to be witty without being too try-hard. You know the drill. Most of my matches were forgettable. Guys who started conversations with hey, or sup, or my personal favorite, just a single emoji. I would swipe left on more profiles than I cared to count. It was exhausting, honestly. I was starting to lose hope, thinking maybe I was just destined to live out my days with my cat, mittens, and a lifetime supply of microwave burritos. And hey, Mittens is a great companion, but you know, a girl needs options. Then, one quiet Tuesday evening, I was curled up on my couch, scrolling through Bumble. My thumb was getting tired from all the swiping. I was about to call it a night, ready to retreat into a world where my biggest dating concern was whether Mittens liked the new brand of salmon pate. That is when his profile popped up. His name was Mark, and he looked good, really good. His main photo was professional-looking headshot, smiling, kind eyes, dark hair neatly styled. Not a selfie from a dirty bathroom mirror, not a photo of him holding a dead fish, not even a group shot where I had to guess which one he was. Just a genuinely handsome, put-together guy. Another photo showed him hiking, looking rugged but approachable. A third was him cooking in a kitchen that looked suspiciously clean, which, as a woman, was a definite plus. His bio was equally impressive. It was not just a list of emojis or a vague adventure seeker. He wrote about his love for indie films, his passion for cooking sea. The kitchen photo was not just for show, and how he enjoyed spending weekends exploring local hiking trails. He even had a line about wanting to find someone who could appreciate a good cup of coffee and a lively debate about the merits of dark chocolate. I actually chuckled. It felt genuine, like he would put effort into it. My first thought was, okay, Sarah, do not get your hopes up. He is probably a catfish, or he is secretly married, or he is going to turn out to be a flat earther. But something about him felt different. He just seemed normal, like the kind of guy you would meet at a coffee shop or a friend's party, not some shadowy figure lurking in the digital ether. So, I swiped right, and to my surprise, we matched. My heart did that little fluttery thing it had not done in a while. He messaged me almost immediately. Hey Sarah, great to match with you. Your bio cracked me up. What is your go-to indie film recommendation? See, already a real question. Not hey, not sup. I typed back, feeling a genuine smile spread across my face. We started chatting, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about films, about our favorite hiking spots in the area, about our jobs. He was a software engineer, which sounded stable and smart. He asked thoughtful questions and actually seemed to listen to my answers. He even remembered details I would mention briefly, like my love for a specific brand of artisanal tea. It was refreshing, honestly. After weeks of bland, forgettable interactions, Mark was a breath of fresh air. After a few days of texting back and forth, he suggested we meet up. How about coffee first? He typed. Keep it casual. If we hit it off, maybe dinner sometime next week. Perfect. Coffee was always the safest bet for a first date. Low commitment. Easy escape if things went south. I agreed, and we made plans for Saturday afternoon at a popular, bustling coffee shop downtown. Leading up to the date, I felt a mix of nerves and genuine excitement. I spent way too long picking out an outfit, trying on at least 5 different tops before settling on a cute but casual sweater. I even gave myself a mini pep talk in the mirror. You got this. Sarah, he seems great. Just be yourself. I was actually looking forward to it, which was a feeling I had not had in a long time when it came to dating. It felt like, finally, after all the duds and the disappointments, I might have found someone decent, someone real. Saturday afternoon rolled around, and I arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes early, heart doing a nervous little jig in my chest. I ordered a chai latte my usual, and found a small table near the window. I checked my phone, adjusted my sweater, and tried to look nonchalant. Then he walked in, and let me tell you, he looked even better in person. He was taller than I expected, with a confident but not arrogant stride. He spotted me, and that charming smile from his profile photo spread across his face, making his eyes crinkle at the corners. He came over, extended a hand, and introduced himself. His handshake was firm, warm. Sarah, right. Great to finally meet you in person. You look even better than your photos. He said it smoothly, not in a creepy, over-the-top way, but in a way that made me blush a little. We sat down, and the conversation picked up right where our text had left off. We talked about everything and nothing. He was genuinely curious about my work, my hobbies, my family. He remembered details I would only briefly mention, like my sister's upcoming wedding or my weekend plans to visit a local art gallery. He made me laugh, and I felt completely at ease, which was rare for me on a first date. He told me about his work as a software engineer, how he enjoyed problem solving, but also how he balanced it with his creative pursuits, like photography. He showed me a few of his landscape photos on his phone. They were really good, professional quality. He talked about his love for cooking, asking me about my favorite cuisines, and if I ever experimented in the kitchen. As the date progressed, I started to notice a few things, subtle things, that at the time, I just chalked up to him being an attentive, engaged conversationalist. But looking back now, they make my blood run cold. First, his gaze. He had these really intense, piercing blue eyes. When I was talking, he would not just look at me, he would study me. It was not overtly creepy, not at first. I told myself he was just a good listener, that he was really engaged in what I was saying. But sometimes, his eyes would linger a little too long, a little too intensely, especially when I was talking about something personal, like my family or my past relationship. It was like he was trying to see through me, to peel back the layers. I remember feeling a tiny, almost imperceptible shiver, but I quickly dismissed it. He is just really into you. Sarah, I told myself, do not be weird. Then there were the questions. He would ask follow-up questions that were incredibly specific. I mentioned I liked a particular obscure indie band, and he immediately asked, "Oh, the one that released that limited edition vinyl last year. I heard their lead singer has a side project with a folk artist from Portland. Have you heard that one?" I was genuinely impressed, thinking, wow, he really pays attention. But now, I wonder how much of that paying attention involved looking me up online. He also made a comment that, at the time, I brushed off as an attempt at humor. We were talking about how easy it is to connect with people online, and he leaned in slightly, a small, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. "It is amazing, is not it?" he said, his voice a little lower. "How much you can learn about someone before you even meet them. It is like you almost feel like you know them already." He laughed lightly, and I laughed with him, thinking he was just making a harmless observation about the digital age. But the way he said it felt a little too knowing, a little too close. He complimented me a lot, not just on my appearance, but on my intelligence, my sense of humor, my choices. He made me feel seen, appreciated. He even commented on my sense of style, pointing out a small, unique pendant I was wearing that most people would not even notice. "That is a really interesting piece," he said, his eyes fixed on it. "It looks like something with a story." Again, at the time, I found it flattering. Now it feels like an inventory. The date lasted almost 2 hours, which, for a coffee date, felt like a lifetime. But it flew by. When it was time to go, he insisted on walking me to my car. My car was parked a few blocks away, and I actually felt comfortable walking with him. He was charming, engaging, and genuinely seemed like a good guy. When we got in my car, he paused, looked at me, and said, "I had a really wonderful time. Sarah, I would love to do this again, maybe dinner next time." I smiled, feeling a genuine warmth spread through me. "I would like that very much. Mark." He gave me a respectful goodnight kiss on the cheek, a light brush of his lips against my skin. It was innocent, but I still felt that tiny, lingering shiver, that almost imperceptible unease. I attributed it to first date jitters, to the excitement of a potentially good connection. I got in my car, drove home, feeling an unfamiliar sense of optimism bubbling inside me. As soon as I walked in my door, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "Just got home. Had a fantastic time with you. Sarah, hope you did too. Text me when you are free for dinner." I smiled, feeling a giddy lightness. Maybe this was it. Maybe I would finally found someone who was not a total dud. I texted him back, saying I had a great time too, and that I would love to go to dinner. I put my phone down, feeling a warmth spread through me. I was actually excited. I spent the next hour unwinding, scrolling through my social media, feeling pretty good about how the date had gone. That tiny, nagging feeling of unease was still there, a faint echo in the back of my mind, but I was pushing it down. He was a good guy, right? Charming, handsome, smart. What was there to be uneasy about? Then, for some reason, I can't even tell you why, a thought popped into my head. It was completely random, completely out of the blue. I would see an article pop up on my newsfeed a few days prior about online dating safety, and it had mentioned checking public records, just as a precaution. I remember thinking, who actually does that? That is so extreme. But now, with Mark's intense gaze and that slightly too knowing comment about knowing people already, a tiny seed of doubt, no bigger than a pinprick, started to grow, just for peace of mind. I told myself, I will do a quick check. It will be nothing. It will just prove that he is a perfectly normal, lovely guy, and I am just being paranoid. I opened my laptop, went to GutGoo, and typed in sex offender registry my state. The official government website popped up. I clicked on it, my heart doing a light tap dance, mostly from nerves, partly from the absurdity of what I was doing. I navigated to the search function, entered the city, and then, slowly, hesitantly, I started to type in his name. Mark. I hit search. The page loaded. My eyes scanned the list, my breath catching in my throat. There were a few Marks, but none of them looked like him. See, I thought, a wave of relief washing over me. You are just being paranoid. Sarah, he is fine. But then, I scrolled down, just a little further, and my finger froze. My blood ran cold, a glacial chill spreading through my veins. There, staring back at me from the screen, was his face. Mark, the same charming smile, the same piercing blue eyes that had just looked at me across the coffee table, the same neatly styled dark hair. It was him. No doubt, no question. The photo was a little older, a bit grainy, but it was undeniably him. Below his picture were the details. His full name, his general address, which was in the same part of town he would mention living in, and then the offenses. My eyes blurred, but I forced myself to read them. Assault, indecent exposure, and something else, something even worse, that made my stomach churn and my vision swim. Details about the victims, vague enough not to identify them, but specific enough to paint a horrifying picture. My entire body went rigid. The room started to spin. My hands, which had been resting on the keyboard, started to tremble uncontrollably. A wave of nausea washed over me, so intense I thought I might throw up. My heart was not just tapping, anymore it was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror. Disbelief wore with a cold, horrifying certainty. No, this could not be right. This was a mistake. A different Mark. A cruel coincidence. But the face-to-face was undeniable. It was him, the charming, handsome, attentive man who had just walked me in my car, who had just kissed me on the cheek, who had just texted me about dinner. I started to hyperventilate. Short, ragged gasp for air. My mind raced, replaying every single moment of our date. But now, every detail was twisted, corrupted, horrifying. His intense gaze, not engaged, predatory. His specific questions, not attentive, information gathering. His comment about knowing people already, not a joke, a chilling confession that he had been researching me, studying me long before we even met. His compliments, not flattering, manipulation, the way he noticed my pendant, not observant, an inventory, the goodnight kiss, not innocent, a violation, the tiny, imperceptible shiver I would felt. It was not jitters. It was my gut, screaming at me, trying to warn me, and I had ignored it. I had dismissed it. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Even though the air conditioning was on, I felt a scream building in my throat, but it would not come out. It was trapped, a silent terror that threatened to tear me apart from the inside. He knew my name. He knew my number. He knew what kind of car I drove. He knew the general area where I lived, because he would walk me to my car. He knew my job, my hobbies, my family. He knew me, and I knew nothing about him, nothing real, except for the horrifying truth plastered across my laptop screen. What if he had not just walked me to my car? What if he had tried to come inside? What if I had invited him in? The thought made me gag. My knees felt weak, and I slumped back against the couch, clutching my chest, trying to regulate my breathing, trying to make sense of the nightmare that had just unfolded before my eyes. The first thing I did, after a few minutes of pure, unadulterated panic, was grab my phone. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped it. I scrolled through my contacts, found his name, and with a trembling thumb, I blocked him, deleted the text. Then, I went to the Bumble app, found our chat, and unmatched him, deleting his profile from my site forever. It felt like a frantic act of self-preservation, like if I could just erase him from my digital world. I could erase him from my real one too, but I knew that was not true. The image of his face, smiling, was burned into my mind. My next frantic action was to check all the locks on my doors and windows. Every single one. I pulled down all the blinds, even the ones in rooms I rarely used. I peered through the peephole, scanning the hallway, convinced I would see his shadow lurking outside my door. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through me. I finally managed to call my best friend, Jessica. My voice was a shaky whisper, barely audible. Jess. I choked out, You are not going to believe what just happened. As I recounted the story, my voice growing stronger with each terrifying detail, I could hear the horror in her voice. She was shocked, disgusted, and immediately concerned for my safety. She told me to stay put, that she was coming over. When she arrived, about 20 minutes later, I was still a wreck, pacing, trembling on the verge of tears. She hugged me tight, and for the first time since seeing that registry, I finally broke down, sobbing into her shoulder. She let me cry, then gently guided me to sit down. She checked my locks again, just to be sure. She made me a cup of chamomile tea, but I could not even hold the mug steady. We spent the rest of the night talking, or rather, her talking, trying to calm me down, trying to rationalize, trying to make me feel safe. She suggested I call the non-emergency police line, just to report it, just to have a record. I hesitated, feeling a fresh wave of shame and embarrassment. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? But she insisted, reminding me that I had not done anything wrong. I was a potential victim here. I ended up not calling that night. Too overwhelmed, too terrified. That night was a blur of fear and sleeplessness. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound seemed amplified. I kept the lights on, huddled under my blankets, my cat mittens curled up beside me, her purr the only comforting sound in the terrifying silence. I replayed the date over and over again in my head, dissecting every word, every gesture, every subtle cue that I had missed. The horror was not just about what could have happened, but about the chilling realization of how close I'd come, how easily I had been fooled. He was a master of manipulation, of projecting an image of normalcy that was a complete lie. The next few days were a living nightmare. I could not shake the feeling of being watched. Every car that slowed down on my street, every person who walked past my apartment building, every wrong number call, they all sent a jolt of terror through me. I kept my blinds perpetually drawn. I stopped going to the gym in my building, convinced he might somehow know my routine. I changed my route to work, even though it added 10 minutes to my commute. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, in my own life. I stopped using dating apps altogether. The thought of ever putting myself out there again, of trusting a stranger, made me physically ill. The sense of vulnerability was overwhelming. It was not just that I had been on a date with a dangerous person. It was a betrayal of trust, the shattering of my perception of safety in the world. He had invaded my sense of security, not with force, but with charm and deception. I talked to a therapist about it. She helped me process the trauma, the fear, the anger. She told me that what I experienced was a form of psychological violation, even without physical harm. The constant anxiety, the paranoia, the difficulty sleeping, these were all normal reactions to such a terrifying encounter. It took months, truly months, before I could even begin to feel a semblance of normalcy again. Even now, a year later, the fear has not completely gone away. It is like a faint scar, a phantom ache that flares up unexpectedly. I still find myself looking over my shoulder more often than I used to. I am more cautious, more guarded, more distrustful. I have learned to listen to that gut feeling, that tiny shiver of unease, no matter how small or irrational it might seem. Because sometimes that tiny whisper is your brain screaming at you to run. The most terrifying part, the thing that still keeps me up some nights, is the realization that these people exist. They walk among us, disguised as perfectly normal, charming individuals. They are not cartoon villains with obvious tells. They are handsome, articulate, seemingly kind. They know how to blend in, how to manipulate, how to gain your trust. And they are out there, right now, probably swiping through profiles, looking for their next target. So, please, if you're listening to this, and you are out there dating online, or even just meeting new people, be careful. Be vigilant. Do your research. Trust your gut, even if it feels like paranoia. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters are not hiding in the dark. Sometimes, they are sitting right across from you, smiling, and looking like the perfect catch. And you might not even know it until it is almost too late. All right, so you have heard my story about Sarah, about how that whole dating app nightmare unfolded for her. It was a stark reminder that sometimes the monsters do not look like monsters at all. They look normal, charming, even, and that gut feeling, that little whisper of unease. You gotta listen to it. Always. But that was not the end of the dating app horror stories I have come across. No, not by a long shot. Because the truth is, for every Sarah, there is an Alex. And Alex's story, well, it starts with a Tinder hookup, just like countless others. But it ends in a place far darker than he could have ever imagined. This happened a few years back to a guy I knew, let us call him Alex. Alex was, and still is, a pretty regular dude. Mid-30s, decent job in tech, lived in a respectable apartment in the city. Like a lot of us, he would have been on and off dating apps for years. He would have had his share of weird dates, a few good ones, and plenty of ghostings. He was not looking for anything serious. Not really. Just some company, maybe a good time. You know how it is. He would have been chatting with this woman, Maya, for about a week. Her profile was perfect. Dark, wavy hair, piercing blue eyes, a smile that seemed genuinely warm. Her bio mentioned hiking, indie movies, and a love for spicy food, all things Alex was into. Their conversations flowed easily, none of that awkward small talk or forced banter. She seemed witty, intelligent, and genuinely interested in what he had to say. A breath of fresh air, he thought. After a few days of back and forth, she suggested they meet up for drinks. Alex, feeling cautiously optimistic, agreed. They decided on a trendy cocktail bar downtown, a place with dim lighting and a good vibe. When he saw her walk in, Alex felt that little jolt of excitement. She looked even better in person. She was wearing a simple black dress that flattered her figure, and her eyes, those piercing blue eyes, sparkled when she smiled at him. They talked for hours. She listened intently, laughed at his jokes, and shared stories about her own life that felt intimate in a good way. She worked in marketing. She said, for a small startup he had not heard of. She would just moved to the city a few months ago, still getting settled. Everything seemed to line up. There was just one tiny thing, a little flicker of something that Alex, in his excitement, quickly dismissed. When he asked her where exactly she lived, she just waved her hand vaguely and said, "Oh, just a few blocks from here. It is a new building, nothing special." It was not a lie, per se, but it was evasive. And later, when he mentioned a local landmark, she seemed a little unsure about his location, despite claiming to have lived nearby for months. But hey, new city, right? He brushed it off. After a few drinks, the conversation naturally turned a little more flirtatious. The chemistry was undeniable. She leaned in closer when she spoke, her hand occasionally brushing his arm. When she suggested they go back to her place for a nightcap, Alex did not hesitate. He was a grown man, and he felt a genuine connection. What could go wrong? They took a short Uber ride to what looked like a fairly new, modern apartment complex. The lobby was sleek, all glass and polished concrete, but the hallway leading to her apartment was a little darker, a bit more institutional than he expected. Her apartment itself was on the 10th floor. When she opened the door, Alex stepped inside. The first thing he noticed was how clean it was. Spotless, almost, and sparsely furnished. A comfortable-looking sofa, a minimalist coffee table, a large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. No personal clutter, no photos, no books, no little trinkets that usually tell you something about a person. It felt staged. But again, he told himself, she is new to the city. Maybe she just had not gotten around to decorating yet. Or maybe she was just a minimalist. She offered him a drink of whiskey, neat, just like he would mention he liked earlier. He watched her pour it, her movements graceful and confident. They sat on the sofa, talking, laughing, the whiskey warming him from the inside out. He felt completely at ease, completely comfortable. And then, after his second drink, maybe his third, things started to get fuzzy. He remembered her saying something, her voice soft, her eyes fixed on his. He remembered feeling a sudden, overwhelming wave of tiredness, like he would have been hit by a tranquilizer dart. His head swam, the room tilted. He tried to respond, but his tongue felt thick, his words slurred. He felt her hand on his arm, a gentle squeeze. And then nothing, just a vast, empty darkness. The next morning, Alex woke up slowly, painfully. His head throbbed, a dull, insistent ache behind his eyes. His mouth tasted like a forgotten ashtray. He blinked, trying to clear the fog from his brain, and realized he was in an unfamiliar bed. The room was bright, too bright, with sunlight streaming through a large window. He was alone. The sheets were crisp white and smelled faintly of bleach. He pushed himself up, his muscles protesting. He was wearing his clothes from the night before, but they were a little rumpled. "Maya," he called out, his voice hoarse. No answer. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet hitting a plush, thick carpet. He stood up, feeling a bit wobbly, and stumbled towards the door. The apartment was silent. He checked his pockets, his phone, his wallet. Gone. A cold jolt of adrenaline shot through him, instantly cutting through the hangover haze. What the hell? He patted his pockets again, frantically, desperately. Nothing. His heart started to pound. This was not right. This was not just a casual hookup. He rushed out of the bedroom, his eyes scanning the living room. It was exactly as he remembered it, clean, sparse, impersonal. The coffee table was empty. No sign of his phone, his wallet, or Maya. Maya! He shouted again, louder this time. The silence that followed was deafening. It was not just quiet, it was a profound, unnatural stillness. He tried the front door. He turned the knob. It was locked. He jiggled it, twisted it, pulled at it. Nothing. It was solid. He tried using his shoulder, a half-hearted attempt born of pure panic. But the door did not even creak. It felt like a vault. Okay, deep breaths. Alex, deep breaths. He tried to rationalize. Maybe she just left early for work. Maybe she took his stuff as a joke. No, that was stupid. This was not a joke. This was a robbery. A really messed up, elaborate robbery. He had been drugged, robbed, and now he was locked in. He moved to the windows. They were large, floor-to-ceiling panes of glass, offering a stunning view of the city skyline. But they did not open. No latch, no crank, nothing. They were sealed shut. He pressed his hand against the glass. It felt thick, reinforced. He was 10 stories up. Even if he could break the glass, which he doubted, it was a long way down. He walked into the kitchen. It was immaculate. Stainless steel appliances, gleaming countertops. He opened the fridge. Empty. A carton of milk, a half-eaten container of yogurt, and a single bottle of water. That was it. No personal groceries, no magnets on the fridge, no messy spice rack. Just generic. The bathroom was equally sterile. A single toothbrush, still in its plastic wrapper. A generic bar of soap. A fresh, folded towel. No makeup, no personal toiletries, no hair products. Nothing that suggested a woman or anyone actually lived here. The dread started to coil in his stomach, a cold, sickening knot. This was not just a robbery. This was something else. Something far more sinister. He went back to the living room, his mind racing. He needed to find a way out. He needed to call for help. He looked for a landline. Nothing. He checked the TV, hoping for a remote, for a cable box, anything with a power button. The screen was blank black. No power light. He paced the apartment, his breathing growing shallow. Every shadow seemed to deepen. Every creak of the building seemed to amplify. He felt a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, the distinct feeling of being watched. He spun around, but there was nothing, just the sterile, silent apartment. He tried, shouting again. "Hello, is anyone here? Let me out." His voice echoed eerily in the empty space. No response. He started checking every drawer, every cabinet. In the kitchen, nothing but empty shelves. In the living room, the coffee table had a single brand new remote, but it did not seem to work. He opened a small cabinet under the TV. Empty. Then, tucked away in a corner of the bedroom, under a stack of fresh, folded towels, he found something. It was a small, black device no bigger than his thumb. He picked it up. It looked like a tiny camera, the kind you might use for discreet surveillance. His blood ran cold. He stared at the camera, then slowly lifted his gaze, scanning the room. Where else? He ran his hands along the walls, along the ceiling. Nothing immediately visible. But the realization hit him like a physical blow. He was being watched. He had been watched since he walked in. The thought sent a wave of nausea through him. Every move, every panic breath, every desperate search someone was watching. And they were enjoying it. He stumbled back to the sofa, collapsing onto it. His head was still pounding, but now it was overshadowed by a chilling existential fear. He was not just robbed. He was trapped, and he was a show. As if on cue, the large flat-screen TV on the wall flickered to life. Alex jumped, his heart leaping into his throat. The screen was black for a moment. Then a single line of text appeared, stark white against the darkness. "Welcome, Alex." His breath hitched. How did it know his name? Of course, it knew his name. It knew everything. Another line of text appeared below the first. "The game has begun." Alex stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. A game? What kind of game? What was happening? He tried to speak, but his voice was stuck in his throat. He just sat there, frozen, watching the screen. The text changed again. "Your objective, find the exit. Time is of the essence." Then, a timer appeared in the corner of the screen, 235959. It was counting down. 24 hours. Panic, raw and visceral, clawed its way up his throat. He was not just trapped, he was in some kind of twisted reality show. He was a participant in a game he did not sign up for, with stakes he could not even begin to comprehend. He scrambled off the sofa, his eyes darting around the apartment. Find the exit. But he would already checked the door, the windows. There was no obvious exit. This had to be a trick, a puzzle. He started tearing the place apart systematically. He flipped cushions, pulled out drawers, banged on walls, desperately searching for a hidden button, a secret passage, anything. He checked under the bed, behind the TV, even inside the toilet tank. Nothing. The apartment was a meticulously constructed cage. The hours ticked by, agonizingly slow. The timer on the screen was a constant, mocking reminder of his dwindling time. He tried shouting again, banging on the walls, hoping someone in a neighboring apartment would hear him. But the building remained eerily silent. It was as if he was the only person in the entire complex. He felt his sanity starting to fray at the edges. The hunger pang started, then the thirst. He drank the bottle of water from the fridge, savoring every drop. But it was not enough. At one point, he heard a faint scratching sound coming from behind one of the walls. He froze, listening intently. It sounded like claws, or something dragging. He pressed his ear against the wall, but the sound faded as quickly as it had appeared. His imagination. Or was there something else in the apartment? Something he had not found yet. He went back to the bedroom, desperate for a new perspective. He threw open the closet door. It was empty, save for a few hangers. But then he noticed something. The back panel of the closet seemed different. A subtle discoloration, a slight seam that was not quite flush with the rest of the wall. His heart hammered in his chest. He pushed against it. It did not budge. He pushed harder, using his shoulder. A faint click. And then, slowly, silently, a section of the wall swung inwards, revealing a dark, narrow passage. Alex stared at it, a mixture of terror and exhilaration surging through him. An exit, or another trap. He hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. He had no other choice. He stepped into the darkness. The passage was cramped and smelled faintly of dust and stale air. He shuffled forward, his hands outstretched, feeling his way along the rough walls. The passage seemed to go on for ages, twisting and turning, disorienting him completely. He had no idea if he was going up, down, or sideways. Finally, he saw a faint sliver of light ahead. He quickened his pace, his hope rekindling. He pushed through what felt like another hidden door and stumbled out into another room. It was a small, windowless space. A single fluorescent light humming overhead. In the center of the room was a small metal table, and on it, a single item, a burner phone. An old Nokia, the kind people used years ago. He snatched it up, his hands trembling. He powered it on. The screen flickered to life. No signal bars. No contacts. Just a single, pre-programmed number labeled operator. He stared at the screen, then at the number. His finger hovered over the call button. Who was the operator? Was this another part of the game? Or was it his lifeline? He took a shaky breath and pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, then a click. A distorted, synthesized voice spoke. It was raspy, mechanical, devoid of any human inflection. Hello, Alex. Alex flinched. Who is this? What do you want? The voice chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. You are doing well. Alex, you found the first stage. Now for the next. What next? What game is this? Let me go, Alex pleaded, his voice cracking. The game is life. Alex, and you are playing for yours. The voice paused. Your next task is simple. You must choose. Choose what? On the table, there are two buttons, red and blue. One will lead you to freedom, the other to the end of your game. Alex looked down at the table. Two buttons, exactly as the voice described. Red, menacingly bright. Blue, a calm, inviting shade. He felt a wave of despair wash over him. This was impossible. How could he choose? It was a 50-50 chance. How do I know which one? He demanded, his voice desperate. You do not. That is the beauty of it. You must trust your instincts. Or perhaps your luck. The voice was chillingly calm. The timer, Alex, is still running. He looked at the phone in his hand. The timer. He had to make a choice. He could not stay here forever. He stared at the buttons, his mind racing, trying to find some hidden clue, some logical path. Was there a pattern? A trick? He remembered the blue eyes of Maya. Did that mean blue was good? Or was it a deliberate misdirection? He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and reached out his hand. He hesitated, his fingers hovering. Red. Blue. He picked blue. He pressed the blue button. Nothing happened. He frowned. Hello, operator. The phone remained silent. The room remained silent. The timer on the phone was still ticking. What is happening? Alex whispered, his voice laced with dread. Then a low hum started, growing louder, vibrating through the concrete floor. The single fluorescent light above flickered, then died, plunging the room into darkness. Alex cried out, a raw, terrified sound. He fumbled for the phone, trying to use its dim screen as a light source. Suddenly, a section of the wall behind him slid open with a soft hiss. A blinding white light streamed in, forcing him to shield his eyes. He stumbled backwards, squinting. As his eyes adjusted, he saw it, a vast, brightly lit chamber, filled with rows upon rows of monitors. And in front of those monitors, figures. Dozens of them, shadowy, indistinct, all staring at a central screen. And on that central screen was him. A live feed of his terrified face. He was in a control room. Or rather, he was being controlled from this room. He saw the operator, a figure sitting in a high-backed chair, silhouetted against the glow of the screens. Not a single person, but many. This was not just a game for one. It was a spectacle. And then he saw her. Maya. She was standing near one of the monitors, her back to him. She was wearing a different outfit now, a plain, dark uniform. She turned slowly, her blue eyes meeting his. But there was no warmth in them now. No charm, just a cold, vacant professionalism. A pawn in their game or a willing participant. He could not tell. The synthesized voice, now coming from unseen speakers in the chamber, boomed. Congratulations. Alex, you chose correctly. For now. Alex stared at Maya, then at the screens, then back at the shadowy figures. His world, which had already shattered, now twisted into an even more grotesque nightmare. He was not just a participant, he was an exhibit, a plaything for a twisted audience. He felt a hand on his shoulder. He spun around. It was a large, burly man in a similar dark uniform, his face impassive. The man gestured toward the door. This way. Alex, the synthesized voice commanded. Your next stage awaits. Alex felt his legs give out. He sank to the floor, his mind reeling. He was trapped, not just in an apartment, but in a system. A game with no real end, only stages. He looked at Maya one last time. Her face was blank. She was just part of the machinery. As the man pulled him to his feet and guided him towards the door, Alex caught a glimpse of the central screen again. His own terrified face, projected for all to see. And then, at the bottom of the screen, a new line of text appeared, glowing ominously. A new Tinder profile flashed briefly on one of the smaller monitors. A different face, a different name. Someone else, just like him, looking for a connection, a good time. Someone else, about to step into the meticulously crafted web. Alex was dragged through the door, the white light receding behind him. He did not know where he was going, or what the next stage would entail. But he knew, with a horrifying certainty, that he would never truly be free again. He was just another piece in their game. And the game, as the voice had said, was life and death. And that, my friends, is the real horror. Not just the trap, but the endless cycle. The chilling realization that somewhere out there, right now, someone else is swiping right, completely oblivious of the darkness waiting for them, hidden behind a charming smile and a perfect profile. So, next time you're scrolling through those apps, remember Alex, remember Sarah, and remember to always trust that gut feeling. Because sometimes that little whisper of unease is not just your anxiety. It is your brain screaming at you to run. All right, so you know I have seen some dating app nightmares, and Alex's story is another one that chills me to the bone. He was a regular guy, mid-30s, just looking for some casual fun on Tinder. He matched with Maya, perfect profile, charming, witty. Their first date was great, undeniable chemistry. He even brushed off a few small things, like her being a little too intense, or maybe a strange comment about his apartment. He thought it was just nerves. He thought it was just him overthinking. But it was not. It never is. And that brings me to Sarah's story. Sarah, not her real name, for obvious reasons. Her experience, though, it is one of those that makes you want to throw your phone into the ocean and live in a cave. It starts like so many others, with a swipe right. Sarah was in her late 20s, living in a decent apartment in a pretty standard suburban area. Her job was fine, her friends were great, but like most people her age, she felt that little hum of loneliness sometimes, that desire for connection. She had been on Tinder for a while, mostly for casual dates, maybe a short-term thing, nothing too serious. She would see all the shirtless mirror selfies, the guys posing with sedated tigers, the ones who just wanted to vibe. She was pretty good at sifting through the noise, she thought. She had a good BS detector. Or so she believed. One evening, after a particularly boring Tuesday, she was swiping through, half watching some reality TV, when she came across Mark. His profile was impressive. He was not overtly flashy, no exotic cars or cheesy filtered pictures. Just a few well-lit, natural-looking photos. One of them hiking, a genuine smile on his face. Another with a dog, looking friendly and approachable. His bio was short, witty, and seemed to hint at a stable, interesting life. He was a project manager. It said, enjoyed craft beer, hiking, and old movies. He looked good, too tall, dark hair, kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Honestly, he seemed like one of the good ones. The kind you rarely find on these apps. She swiped right. To her surprise, it was an instant match. Her phone buzzed, and a little thrill went through her. Maybe this was it. Maybe she would finally found someone who was not a complete dud. He messaged her almost immediately. Hey, Sarah. Great profile. Love that picture of you at the beach. Hope you are having a good week. Simple, polite, not too forward. Exactly what she liked. Their conversation flowed effortlessly from there. They talked about their favorite hiking trails, their shared love for obscure indie films, even their mutual frustration with slow drivers. He was charming, intelligent, and genuinely seemed interested in what she had to say. He asked thoughtful questions, and his replies were always articulate, sometimes even funny. It felt easy. Too easy, perhaps. But at the time, she just thought she would finally gotten lucky. After a few days of texting, he suggested they meet up. There's this great little gastropub downtown. He wrote, casual, good food, not too loud. How about Friday night? Sarah checked the place online. It was popular, always busy, right in the heart of the city. Perfect for a first date. Public, safe. She agreed, feeling a flutter of excitement mixed with the usual first date jitters. Friday evening arrived, and Sarah spent a little extra time getting ready. She wanted to make a good impression. She chose a cute, comfortable dress, did her hair and makeup, and even wore her favorite pair of earrings, a small, superstitious gesture for good luck. She took an Uber downtown, arriving a few minutes early, and found a spot at the bar. She ordered a sparkling water, just to settle her nerves. Then he walked in, and I am telling you, Mark was even better in person. Taller than she expected, with an easy confidence that was not arrogant. He spotted her almost immediately, his eyes lighting up with that same kind smile from his profile picture. He walked over, extending a hand. Sarah, hi, I am Mark. Great to finally meet you. His voice was smooth, a little deeper than she would imagine, and it had a calming quality. They found a small, cozy table in the corner. The pub was bustling, filled with the happy chatter of people unwinding after a long week. The atmosphere was perfect. They ordered drinks. Sarah went for a crisp white wine. Mark ordered a craft beer. The conversation picked up right where their texts had left off, flowing effortlessly. He made her laugh, genuinely laugh, several times. He listened intently when she spoke, his gaze steady and warm. He seemed truly interested in her life, her passions, her dreams. She found herself opening up to him in a way she rarely did on a first date. It felt like they would known each other for ages, like they were old friends rediscovering a lost connection. He talked about his job, his love for his dog, a golden retriever named Charlie, his plans for a hiking trip next month. Everything seemed so normal, so perfect, but there were these tiny, almost imperceptible things. Little moments that, in hindsight, screamed red flag. At the time, she brushed them off, like when he kept refilling her water glass, even when it was still half full, or when he insisted on ordering their second round of drinks, even though she was closer to the bar. Do not move, he would said with a charming smile. I have got it. He was just being chivalrous, she thought. A gentleman. And then there was his gaze. It was not overtly creepy, not like some guys she would met. But sometimes, when she was talking, she would catch his eyes, and they would hold hers a little too long, a little too intensely. There was a depth there that was unsettling, like he was looking through her, not just at her, a flicker of something she could not quite place, a coldness beneath the warmth. But then he would smile, and it would vanish, and she would tell herself she was just overthinking things. First dates always made her a little paranoid. They ordered food burgers, nothing fancy. The food was good, the wine was good, and Mark was fantastic. She felt a lightness, a giddiness she had not felt in a long time. She even messaged her best friend under the table. OMG, he is amazing. Around the time they were finishing their food, she started to feel a little off, a bit lightheaded, more than she should have been for just 2 glasses of wine. She had not even finished her second glass yet. She attributed it to not eating enough during the day, or maybe the excitement. She took another sip of her wine, trying to clear her head. The pub's lights seemed to dim slightly, and the sounds of conversation around her became muffled, distant. "You okay?" "Sarah," Mark asked, his voice sounding a little further away than it should have. He was looking at her, his expression concerned. But again, there was that flicker in his eyes, that cold, unreadable depth. "Yeah, just a little woozy," she mumbled, trying to smile reassuringly. But her lips felt thick, unresponsive. Her vision started to blur at the edges, the vibrant colors of the pub turning into a hazy wash. A wave of nausea washed over her, making her stomach clench. "Maybe you have had a bit too much to drink," Mark said, his voice softer now, almost soothing. He reached across the table, his hand gently covering hers. His touch felt strangely cold. "I should get you home. I will call you a cab." She tried to protest, tried to say she was fine, but the words would not form properly. Her tongue felt like lead. Her head was spinning, the room tilting precariously. The last thing she remembered was Mark standing up, his grip firm on her arm, and sensation being helped out her chair, his face a blur above her. Then darkness. Complete, absolute darkness. The next thing Sarah knew, she was waking up to a dull, throbbing headache that felt like an anvil had been dropped on her skull. Her mouth was dry, her tongue felt like sandpaper, and a wave of nausea rolled through her, making her stomach churn violently. She tried to open her eyes, but the mere thought of light sent a sharp pain through her temples. Everything was disoriented, blurry, as if she was seeing the world through a thick, grimy film. She blinked slowly, forcing her eyes open, tried to make sense of her surroundings. It was dim, very dim. A single, bare bulb hung precariously from the ceiling, casting a sickly yellow glow on concrete walls. Concrete, not her bedroom wall, not a hospital room. Concrete. Her heart gave a sudden, painful lurch. She was lying on something hard, a thin, scratchy blanket barely cushioning her from the cold, unforgiving surface beneath. It smelled damp, like earth, mildew, and something else, something metallic and stale, like old blood or rust. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of unmoving air, a chilling stillness that seemed to press in on her. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw its way up her throat. She tried to sit up, but her limbs felt heavy, unresponsive, like they belonged to someone else. Her muscles ached, and a wave of dizziness sent her sprawling back down. She was weak, so incredibly weak. Where am I?" she croaked, her voice a raspy whisper. It sounded alien, like it was not her own. She forced herself to focus, to push past the lingering fog of whatever she had been given. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet. The walls were rough, unpainted concrete. The floor was also concrete, cold against her skin where her arm had fallen off the makeshift cot. There were no windows, just that one sad, lonely light bulb. This was not a dream. This was not a hangover. This was real. Her clothes were still on, The same dress she would worn on the date, but it was rumpled, stained with something she could not quite identify in the dim light. Her purse was gone. Her phone was gone. All her belongings. She was utterly alone, utterly vulnerable. She pushed herself up again, this time more slowly, bracing herself against the dizziness. Her head swam, but she managed to get into a sitting position, her back against the cold concrete wall. Her eyes scanned the room, desperate for any clue, any sign of how she got here, or where here even was. In one corner, there was a metal bucket, a makeshift toilet. Her stomach churned again. In another, a small, rickety wooden table with nothing on it. That was it. No furniture, no decorations, nothing to make it feel like a normal room. This was a cell. The door, her eyes fixed on it. It was heavy, made of steel, with no handle on her side. Just a solid, unforgiving slab of metal set into the concrete wall. There was a small, square peephole, but it was covered from the outside. She tried to push against it, but it did not budge. It was locked. She was locked in. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was not just woozy from a bad drink. She had been drugged, abducted, and she was in a stranger's basement. The pure, unadulterated terror that coursed through her then was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was primal, suffocating. Her breath hitched in her chest, and she felt tears sting her eyes, but she quickly blinked them back. Crying would not help. Panic would not help. She needed to think. She tried to remember. Mark, the pub, the lightheadedness, his concerned face, but that cold flicker in his eyes. He must have done this. He must have slipped something into her drink. The thought made her skin crawl, made her feel violated and utterly stupid for having trusted him. She spent what felt like an eternity just sitting there, trying to process, trying to breathe, trying to stop the tremors that racked her body. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint, irregular drip of water somewhere in the darkness, and the frantic pounding of her own heart. She strained her ears, listening for any sound from above, any sign of life. Nothing, just that chilling, profound silence. After a while, the nausea subsided enough for her to stand, albeit shakily. She shuffled around the small room, her bare feet cold on the concrete. She ran her hands along the walls, searching for any loose brick, any crack, anything that might offer a glimmer of hope. Nothing, just solid, unyielding concrete. The light bulb flickered, making her jump. In one corner, near the floor, she noticed something. Faint, almost invisible in the dim light. Scratches. Deep, desperate scratches in the concrete, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. And beneath them, etched with something sharp, a single letter. A K. Just K. A shiver ran down her spine. She was not the first. The thought was horrifying, but also, strangely, a confirmation that she was not going insane. There had been others. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a sound broke the silence. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, coming from directly above her. Her breath caught in her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She froze, pressing herself against the wall, trying to become invisible. The footsteps moved across the floor above, then paused. She heard a faint clink, like keys, and then the unmistakable sound of someone descending a wooden staircase. The jingle of keys grew louder, closer. Her eyes were fixed on the steel door. A click, then the heavy bolt sliding back. The door creaked open, revealing a sliver of light from a hallway beyond. And then he was there, Mark. He stood in the doorway, framed by the slightly brighter light from the upstairs. He was not smiling. His face was devoid of the charming warmth she would seen on the date. His eyes, those same eyes that seemed so kind, were now cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of empathy. There was a strange, almost serene satisfaction in his expression. He held a tray in his hands, with a plate of what looked like a sandwich and a glass of water. He walked into the small room, closing the heavy door behind him with a soft thud that echoed in the concrete space. The click of the lock, though quiet, was deafening in its finality. "Good. You are awake," he said, his voice calm, almost gentle, but with an underlying menace that made her stomach clench. He placed a tray on the small wooden table. "I was worried you might sleep through breakfast. You were quite out of it." Sarah stared at him, unable to speak, her mind reeling. This was not the Mark from Tinder. This was not the charming, witty man from the gastropub. This was a monster. What do you want?" She finally managed to choke out, her voice trembling. He looked at her, his head tilted slightly, as if observing an interesting specimen. "What do I want?" "Sarah," he repeated, a faint, chilling smile touching his lips. "I want you. I have been looking for someone like you for a very long time." He paused, his gaze sweeping over her, making her feel exposed and vulnerable. "You are perfect, intelligent, beautiful, kind. We are going to be very happy here." "Sarah, very happy indeed." His words were delivered with such a casual, almost loving tone that it made them all the more terrifying. He was not angry. He was not violent, not overtly. He was just matter of fact, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "You are insane," she whispered, tears finally stinging her eyes. "Let me go. Please, just let me go. My friends, my family, they will be looking for me." He chuckled softly, a dry, humorless sound. "Oh, Sarah, they won't know where to look. I am very careful. And by the time they even think to look, you will be settled in. You will understand." He gestured to the tray. "Eat. You need your strength. We have a lot of time together." He stood there, watching her, his presence filling the small, suffocating space. She could not bring herself to touch the food. The thought of putting anything he had touched into her body made her want to gag. "I won't eat anything you give me," she said, trying to infuse her voice with defiance, but it came out weak and shaky. Mark's smile vanished. His eyes hardened. "Do not be difficult. Sarah, it won't help you. It won't change anything. You are here now. This is your home. And I am your companion." He said companion with a twisted emphasis that sent a fresh wave of fear through her. "I have waited too long for this. Do not make me regret choosing you." He stayed for a few more minutes, just watching her, a silent, terrifying presence. Then he turned and walked out, closing the heavy steel door behind him. The click of the lock echoed in the silence, sealing her fate. The first night was a blur of terror and despair. Sarah huddled on the cot, pulling the thin, rough blanket around her, though it offered no comfort against the cold dread that permeated every fiber of her being. Every creak of the house above, every distant hum of machinery, made her jump. She imagined him up there, watching her through the peephole, or just going about his normal life, completely oblivious of the horror he had inflicted. She cried until her eyes were dry and swollen. Then she lay there, staring at the single, flickering light bulb, her mind racing, desperate for a way out. She thought about the K, etched into the wall. Who was K? What happened to them? The thought was a chilling reminder that she was not alone in this nightmare, and that her situation could be far, far worse. Days turned into weeks. The routine was soul-crushing. Mark would come down 2 or 3 times a day. He would bring food, usually something bland, like a sandwich, a bowl of soup, or some fruit. He would insist she eat, sometimes watching her with that unnerving, serene gaze until she took a few bites. She would pretend to eat, pushing the food around her plate, sometimes managing a few mouthfuls just to avoid his displeasure. He never raised his voice, never physically threatened her, but the unspoken threat in his presence was palpable. He talked to her. Oh, he talked. He would sit on a small wooden chair, just outside her reach, and tell her about his day, about his job, about his dog Charlie, about the garden he was planning. He spoke as if they were having a normal conversation, as if she was a willing participant, his devoted partner. He would talk about their future, about how they would grow together, how he would have been lonely for so long, and now he finally had someone who understood him. It was a twisted, delusional monologue, and every word was like a fresh stab of horror. Sarah, meanwhile, was constantly observing. She forced herself to listen, to learn his patterns. When did he come down? How long did he stay? What sounds did she hear from upstairs? She noticed he always brought a small, old-fashioned radio with him, playing soft jazz or classical music, which he would leave on for a few minutes while he was there, making it harder to hear other sounds. When he left, the silence would return, absolute and suffocating. She tried to engage him sometimes, not out of willingness, but out of a desperate need for information. "Mark," she would say, try and keep her voice steady. "What about my job?" "My boss will call the police." He would just smile. "I took care of it. I sent an email from your phone saying you needed to take an extended leave for a family emergency. They won't question it for a while." He even showed her phone once, displaying the sent email, before putting it back in his pocket. It was a cold, calculated move, designed to crush any hope she had of being found. She also searched the room relentlessly. She ran her fingers over every inch of the concrete, looking for a loose stone, a hidden compartment. She tried to chip away at the mortar between the bricks with the edge of the small plastic spoon he sometimes gave her, but it was useless. The concrete was too strong, the spoon too flimsy. One day, while he was talking about his perfect vision for their life together, she noticed something new. He had brought down a small, worn photo album. He flipped through it, showing her pictures of his childhood home, his parents, even a younger version of himself. It was bizarre, like he was trying to build a normal life around her, even as he held her captive. But then she saw it, a blurry picture of a young woman, smiling, her arm around him. She looked vaguely familiar, but Sarah could not place her. He quickly turned the page. "Who was that?" she asked, trying to sound casual. His face tightened, just for a second. No one important, just an old acquaintance. He quickly changed the subject, but the image stuck with her. Another victim, another K. The psychological toll was immense. There were moments of utter despair where she thought she would go mad. She would curl up on the cot, shaking, wishing for it all to end. Then anger would surge through her, a burning rage that fueled a desperate resolve. She would not let him break her. She would not become another K. She started a new routine. Every time he left, she would try to remember every detail she could. The sound of his footsteps, the jingle of his keys, the way the light from the hallway spilled into the room. She also started examining the door more closely. It was heavy steel, but the frame was concrete. Could she chip away at the concrete around the hinges? Too slow, too loud. One afternoon, he brought her a new book to read. It was a romance novel, of all things. Something to pass the time, he said, with that chillingly solicitous tone. As he placed it on the table, he accidentally knocked over the glass of water. It shattered on the concrete floor. Mark cursed under his breath. "Stay here," he ordered. "I will get a broom." He went upstairs, leaving the door slightly ajar in his haste. This was it. Her heart leaped into her throat. This was the opportunity. She moved like a phantom, her bare feet silent on the concrete. She slipped through the slightly open door, her eyes darting around the unfamiliar hallway. It was dark, but she could see a faint light from further down. The air was different here, less damp, more like a normal house. She could hear Mark's footsteps upstairs, moving quickly. She took a breath and ran. The hallway was narrow, leading to a flight of wooden stairs. She took them two at a time, her muscles screaming in protest, but adrenaline coursed through her veins, giving her a burst of artificial strength. At the top of the stairs, she found herself in a dimly lit living room. It was meticulously clean, almost sterile, decorated in a bland, generic style. There were no personal touches, no warmth, just neat furniture and a few framed landscape prints on the walls. She moved quickly, her eyes scanning for an exit, a window, a door, anything. She could hear Mark rummaging around upstairs, probably in the kitchen, looking for a broom. She did not have much time. She saw a front door heavy in dark wood, with a deadbolt. She fumbled with it, her fingers clumsy with panic. The lock turned, but it was stiff. She pulled, pushed, and it finally gave way with a groan. Just as she was about to burst out, she heard a voice. Sarah. Mark. He was standing at the top of a short flight of stairs that led from the kitchen into the living room, a broom in his hand. His face was no longer serene. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and his lips were pulled back in a snarl. You should not have done that, he hissed, dropping the broom and lunging towards her. Sarah screamed, a raw, primal sound that tore from her throat. She pushed the door open just enough to squeeze through, but Mark was too fast. He grabbed her arm, his grip like a vice. She twisted, fought, pulling with all her might. He was stronger, much stronger. He dragged her back inside, slamming the front door shut with a sickening thud. You are not leaving, he roared, his voice no longer calm, no longer gentle. It was a guttural, animalistic sound. He shoved her against the wall, her head hitting the plaster with a dull thud that made stars explode behind her eyes. She fell to the floor, dazed, but the fear kept her from blacking out. She saw him coming toward her, his face contorted with fury. This was it. This was the end. But then, her eyes landed on something on a small side table. A heavy, ornate ceramic vase. Her only chance. All right, so you know I have seen some dating app nightmares, and Sarah's story is one that makes me want to throw my phone into the ocean. But trust me, what I am about to tell you, this one is not just a nightmare. This one is the kind of story that makes you want to live in a cave, far away from Wi-Fi signals and human interaction. Because sometimes the person on the other side of that screen, they are not just a bad date. They are something else entirely. For me, Tinder was always a bit of a crapshoot. You swipe, you chat, you meet, and 9 times out of 10, it is either a total dud, a decent but forgettable experience, or someone who clearly did not bother to read your profile past the first picture. I was in my late 20s, working a pretty demanding job, and honestly, just looking for some casual fun, maybe a genuine connection if it happened. My BS detector, I thought, was finely tuned. I would dodge enough emotional vampires and commitment phobes to feel pretty confident in my ability to spot a red flag from a mile away. Then I matched with Chloe. Her profile was striking. Not just conventionally beautiful, though she was that too long. Dark hair, piercing blue eyes, a smile that seemed both inviting and a little mischievous. But her bio was what really got me. It was not just a list of hobbies or a cliche quote. It was witty, a little dark, and hinted at a sharp, intelligent mind. Something about it just screamed different. And in a sea of generic profiles, different was exactly what I was looking for. Our texts started immediately, and they were, for lack of a better word, electric. We talked about everything: obscure movies, philosophy, our weirdest travel experiences. She had this way of turning a simple question into a deep dive, and I found myself genuinely excited to see her name pop up on my phone. We moved to phone calls pretty quickly, and her voice was as captivating as her text, low, a little husky, with a laugh that could make you forget whatever you were doing. She was a photographer, she said, specializing in unique perspectives. Sounded cool, sounded artsy. Sounded like someone I could actually connect with. Our first date was at a busy little craft brewery downtown. I figured a public, well-lit place was always a safe bet. She walked in, and I swear, every head in the place turned. She was even more stunning in person, wearing a simple but elegant black dress that just accentuated her features. We talked for hours. It was easy, it was fun, and I felt that undeniable spark, that rare feeling where you just click with someone. There were a couple of tiny things, though, that in hindsight pinged my internal radar, but I brushed them off. Her eyes, those piercing blue eyes, sometimes felt a little too intense. Like she was not just looking at me, but through me, try to uncover some hidden layer. And she asked a lot of questions about my past relationships, my family, my biggest fears. Not in a nosy way, more like a genuine, deep curiosity. I figured she was just a genuinely inquisitive person, maybe a little more intense than most. I liked it, actually. It felt like she truly wanted to know me. We went on a few more dates after that. Each one was better than the last. We explored a vintage arcade, went for a hike in a local state park, and even cooked dinner together at my place one night. She was charming, intelligent, and incredibly engaging. I was falling for her hard. My friends all commented on how happy I seemed, how I could not stop talking about Chloe. And I could not. She was everything I thought I wanted. After about a month of this, things were getting serious. We would spend countless nights talking until the early hours, sharing stories, dreams, and even some vulnerabilities. It felt natural, inevitable, that we would eventually spend the night together. We had not yet, which was unusual for me, but felt right with Chloe. Like we were building something, not just rushing into physical intimacy. One Friday night, we were out at a quiet Italian place. The wine was flowing, the pasta was excellent, and the conversation was, as always, captivating. We were talking about surprises, about the thrill of the unexpected. And that is when she dropped it. "You know," she said, leaning forward, her eyes twinkling. "I have a surprise for you tonight. A little game, if you are up for it." I grinned. "Oh, yeah. And what kind of game are we talking about?" "Chloe." My mind, of course, went to all sorts of fun, playful scenarios. She was always full of surprises. She took a sip of her wine, her gaze locked on mine. "Well, I want to take you back to my place, but you have to let me blindfold you before we go in." My smile faltered, just for a second. "Blindfold me?" I repeated, a little confused. She laughed, a low, melodic sound. "Yes, think of it as an adventure. I have got something special planned, and I want to be a complete surprise. No peeking, no cheating. Just trust me." My mind immediately started running through it. Blindfold, at her apartment. A tiny alarm bell went off, somewhere deep in the back of my head. It was unusual, a little kinky, maybe, but also a little intense. I mean, I would never had a date ask me to do that before. But then I looked at her. Her eyes were sparkling with excitement. Her smile was genuine, and she seemed so utterly confident and playful. This was Chloe, the woman I was falling for, the one who challenged me and made me laugh. I rationalized immediately. Maybe she had a messy apartment she was embarrassed about, and this was her quirky way of dealing with it. Or maybe it was just a fun, sexy game, a way to build anticipation. She was a photographer, an artist. Artists were often eccentric. Right. All right, I said, a grin spreading across my face again, pushing down that little flicker of unease. "You've got my attention. A blindfold it is. But you promise it is a fun surprise, right? No jumping out of closets with rubber masks." I tried to joke, to lighten the mood. She chuckled, a genuine, warm sound. "Only fun surprises. I promise. You just have to trust me." And I did. I really, truly did. We finished dinner, paid the bill, and headed out to her car. It was a dark night, the kind where the streetlights feel like weak, lonely beacons. The air was cool and crisp. My heart was pounding a little, a mix of excitement and nerves. This was definitely a first for me. As we pulled up to her building, a nondescript, older brick apartment complex that I would never actually seen before, as we usually met elsewhere, she turned to me. "Okay, game time." She reached into her purse and pulled out a silk scarf. It was a deep, rich purple. "Ready she asked, her voice a little softer now, a little more intimate. I nodded, feeling a rush. Ready? She leaned in close, her fingers brushing my hair as she tied the scarf gently around my eyes. The world instantly went black. The scent of her perfume, a subtle mix of vanilla and something earthy, filled my nostrils. For a moment, it was exhilarating. The complete loss of sight, the heightened other senses. "Okay," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "Just hold my hand. I will guide you." I felt her hand take mine, her fingers surprisingly cool. She led me out of the car, and I could hear the faint sounds of traffic, the distant hum of the city. We walked a few steps, and then I heard the faint click of a door being unlocked and the soft creak of it opening. The air shifted. It felt slightly cooler, and there was a faint, almost imperceptible smell. Not perfume, not food, something else. Something I could not quite place. "Watch your step," she murmured, her voice close again. I felt a small lip under my foot, and then we were inside. The first thing I noticed was a silence. It was not just quiet, it was dead quiet. No muffled sounds from neighbors, no hum of appliances. Just a profound stillness that felt heavy. The faint smell I would notice outside seemed a little stronger now. It was metallic, almost like old pennies, but with an underlying sweetness that was vaguely sickening. Like iron in something decaying, masked by an air freshener that was not quite doing its job. "Okay, take another step." She guided me, her hand still firm in mine. I felt my foot sink slightly into something soft. Carpet, I assumed, but it felt dense. Not plush, but thick and matted. She led me forward a few more steps, then turned me. "Just stand here for a moment," she said. Her hand left mine. I stood there blindfolded in the oppressive silence. The excitement I had felt earlier was slowly being replaced by a creeping unease. The game was starting to feel less fun, more disorienting. I tried to listen, to orient myself. I heard her moving, a soft rustle, a faint click that sounded like a lock engaging. My heart gave a little thump. A lock. She was locking the door. "Chloe." I called out, trying to keep my voice light, playful. "What is the big surprise?" No answer. Just silence. My unease ratcheted up a notch. "Chloe, you there?" Then I heard it. A soft, scraping sound coming from somewhere in front of me, like something being dragged across the floor. It was faint, but distinct, and it sounded heavy. "Chloe, seriously, what is going on?" My voice was losing its playful tone. A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Still no answer. The scraping sound continued, punctuated by a series of soft thuds. It sounded like she was moving furniture. Or something else. I reached up, my fingers going to the knot of the blindfold. "All right, that is enough," I said, a little louder, trying to project confidence I was not feeling. "I think I am ready for the reveal." Suddenly, her hand was on mine, firm and cold, stopping me. "Ah, she whispered, her voice right next to my ear. But it was not the warm, playful whisper from the car. This was different. It was flat, cold, no peeking. "Not yet. The fun is just beginning." Her touch sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with excitement. It felt predatory. I pulled my hand away quickly. "Chloe, this is not funny." I said, try to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the tremor in it. "Take the blindfold off." She did not answer. I heard her footsteps move away from me again, then the scraping sound resumed. The metallic, sweet smell was stronger now, making my stomach churn. It reminded me of a butcher shop, but not quite. More clinical. I tried to take a deep breath, but the air felt thick, heavy, and that smell was suffocating. I tried to rationalize it again. Maybe she was setting up some elaborate display of her photography. A dark room. But the sounds, The smell did not fit. I took a cautious step forward, my hand outstretched, trying to feel my way. My fingers brushed against something cold and hard. Metal. A faint hum vibrated through it. What was that? It felt like a large appliance, but not a refrigerator. No, this was different. Do not move. Her voice cut through the darkness, sharp and sudden. It was no longer the charming, husky voice I knew. It was flat, devoid of emotion, and utterly chilling. I froze. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was not a game. This was not fun. This was wrong. What are you doing? Chloe, I demanded, trying to sound angry, to hide the fear that was now a cold, hard lump in my throat. I heard her footsteps again, approaching me. Slow, deliberate. Each step resonated in the profound silence. I could feel her presence, even without seeing her. The air around me grew colder. Then, I felt something brush against my cheek. Cold, hard, and slightly damp. I flinched back. Just preparing, she murmured, her voice close again, but now it sounded detached, like she was talking about mundane chores. Making sure everything is just right for our special evening. My mind was racing, trying to put the pieces together. The locked door, the silence, the strange smell, the scraping sounds, the cold object, her chilling tone. This was not an apartment. It did not feel like one. It felt like something else. A workshop, a lab, a place where things were processed. I made a sudden decision. I ripped the blindfold off. My hands were shaking so badly it took a couple of attempts to untie the knot. The sudden burst of light, even dim, was disorienting. My eyes struggled to adjust, and then I saw it. It was not an apartment. Not in any sense of the word. The room was large, bare, and sparsely lit by a single, harsh fluorescent light strip on the ceiling. The walls were stark white, or maybe they had once been white, now stained with what looked like reddish-brown streaks in places. The floor was concrete, covered in a thick, dark, matted carpet that I now realized was soaked. Not just damp, but saturated with something dark and viscous. That metallic, sweet smell was overpowering now, burning my nostrils. It was the smell of blood. In the center of the room, on a large stainless steel table, was something covered by a dark tarp. Next to it, on another, smaller table, was an array of tools. Not hammers and wrenches. These were surgical tools. Scalpels, clamps, saws, gleaming under the harsh light. My eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of the horror. There were no windows. The door I would come through was thick, steel, with multiple deadbolts. It looked like a soundproof vault. And then I saw Chloe. She was standing a few feet away, holding a long, slender blade. Her eyes, those beautiful, piercing blue eyes, were utterly devoid of warmth. They were cold, flat, and reflected the harsh light with an unnerving intensity. Her smile, the one that had captivated me for weeks, was gone, replaced by a thin, cruel line. "You are not supposed to see yet," she said, her voice a low, disappointed hiss. "It spoils the surprise." My breath caught in my throat. My mind screamed, "Run. Get out. Now. Chloe." I stammered, backing away slowly, my eyes fixed on the knife in her hand. What is this? What are you doing?" She took a step towards me, the knife glinting. "This," she said, gesturing vaguely around the room with the blade, "is my studio. My true art." She moved past me towards a covered table. My eyes followed her, filled with a primal terror. She reached out, grasped the edge of the tarp, and with a flourish pulled it back. The world tilted. Underneath the tarp, on the stainless steel table, was a human body. It was a man. His skin was pale, waxy, and he was splayed out, unmoving. His chest was open, ribs splayed apart, revealing something. Something that had been meticulously arranged, like an anatomical display. His eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling. And then I saw the camera. A high-end digital SLR, set up on a tripod, angled perfectly at the table. Chloe turned back to me, her face now alight with a chilling, triumphant glee. "You see," she whispered, her voice almost breathless with excitement. "Unique perspectives. I told you." My stomach lurched. I gagged, stumbling backward until my back hit the cold, hard wall. My legs felt like jelly. This was not real. This could not be real. Who is that?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. She smiled, a truly terrifying, unhinged smile. "Oh, just a recent subject. He was quite handsome, was not he? A pity. But the art is worth it." She ran her fingers lovingly along the edge of the blade she held. "And you are going to be my next masterpiece." That was it. The last shred of denial snapped. This woman, the one I had fallen for, was a serial killer, and I was her next victim. A surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp, coursed through me. I had to get out. My eyes darted around the room, searching for anything at all. The steel door was too far, and she was between me and it. The tools on the small table, maybe. "Why?" I asked, trying to buy myself time to distract her. "Why are you doing this?" She tilted her head like a curious bird. "Why?" "Because it is beautiful. The human form, stripped bare. The internal workings. The stories they tell once you truly look. And the fear, darling. The fear is the most exquisite light of all." She took another slow step toward me, the knife held loosely, but menacingly. "Your fear, right now, is absolutely exquisite." As she spoke, I noticed something else on the small tool table. A small, heavy wrench lying near the edge. My heart hammered. This was my chance. "You are insane." I spat, trying to sound defiant, trying to mask the pure, unadulterated terror that threatened to consume me. Her smile widened. "Perhaps, but my art is real." She lunged, not a wild, untrained lunge, but a precise, practiced movement. The blade flashed towards my chest. I reacted on instinct. I ducked, throwing myself to the side, hitting the concrete floor with a painful thud. The knife whistled past my ear, embedding itself with a sickening thunk into the wall where I had just been. She cursed a low growl. "Naughty, naughty." I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the pain in my side, and lunged to the tool table. My fingers closed around the cold, heavy wrench. It felt substantial, a weapon. Chloe was already pulling the knife from the wall. She moved with an unnerving grace, like a predator. "You won't get away," she hissed, her eyes burning with a terrifying intensity. I did not answer. I swung the wrench, a wild, desperate arc, aiming for her head. She was quick, though. She ducked, the wrench whistling over her head. But it bought me a precious second. I bolted towards a steel door. It was my only hope. She was right behind me, her footsteps light and swift. I fumbled with the deadbolts, my fingers clumsy with terror. The first one clicked open. The second. "Stop," she shrieked, her voice echoing in the sterile room. I heard the whoosh of the knife again, felt a searing pain in my back as it grazed me. I cried out, but did not stop. Adrenaline was my only fuel. The third deadbolt. It was stiff. My fingers slipped. Panic flared hot and blinding. She grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. Her face was a mask of pure rage, her eyes feral. The knife was raised, poised to strike. I swung the wrench again, this time with all my might, a desperate, last-ditch effort. It connected, not with her head, but with her arm just above the wrist. There was a sickening crunch, and she screamed, a sound of pure agony and fury. The knife clattered to the floor, sliding away. Her grip on me loosened. I did not hesitate. I shoved her back, hard, She stumbled, clutching her injured arm, her face contorted in pain and disbelief. I turned back to the door, my hands shaking violently, and yanked the last deadbolt open. The heavy steel door swung inward with a groan. I did not look back. I burst out of the room, into a dark, narrow hallway. The air outside the studio was still, but felt less oppressive. I could hear the faint sounds of the building, now distant traffic, a TV somewhere. I ran, down the hallway, through a dimly lit living room that looked surprisingly normal, if a little sparse. I saw the front door, the one she had locked. I fumbled with the deadbolt, my fingers numb. It clicked. I tore the door open and burst out into the night, gasping for air. The cool night air hit my face, shocking me back to reality. I was outside. I was free. I did not stop running until I was blocks away, my lungs burning, my back aching from the shallow knife wound. I found a gas station, stumbled inside, and frantically called 911. Explaining it to the dispatcher was almost impossible. A blindfold, a studio, a dead body, a knife-wielding Tinder date. They probably thought I was high or insane, but the terror in my voice and the blood seeping through my shirt must have convinced them. The police arrived quickly. I led them back to the apartment building, my heart pounding with every step. They found the apartment, the steel door, the tools, the body. Everything was exactly as I described. Chloe, however, was gone. She had vanished. The police investigated. They found evidence of multiple victims, a sickening collection of art. They found her other equipment, her detailed notes, her plans. She was a meticulous, cold-blooded killer, driven by some twisted artistic vision. But they never found Chloe. She disappeared without a trace. It was like she just melted into the night. I was questioned for hours, days. My life was turned inside out. Every single detail of our relationship was scrutinized. I had nightmares for months. The smell of that room, the sight of that table, the cold, flat look in her eyes, replaying over and over again in my head. I could not sleep without the lights on. Every dark corner, every unexpected sound, sent me into a cold sweat. It has been a few years now. I am okay, mostly. The physical scar on my back is a constant reminder, a thin, white line that sometimes aches in the cold. But the mental scars, those run deeper. I deleted all my dating apps, of course. I can't even look at them anymore. The thought of swiping, of chatting with a stranger, fills me with a dread I can't shake. I have tried to date, but the trust it is gone. How do you ever truly know someone when the person you thought you knew, the one you were falling in love with, could be a monster? So yeah, you know I have heard some dating app horror stories. But mine is the one that makes me want to tell everyone to just throw their phones into the ocean. Because sometimes behind that perfect profile, behind that witty bio and charming smile, there's not just a bad date. There's a darkness so profound, so utterly evil, that it will haunt you for the rest of your life. And all it takes is one simple request, trust me. Let me blindfold you, and you might just walk straight into your own personal hell. Be careful out there, folks. You never know who is really on the other side. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I have got a story for you that is a pretty stark reminder of just how easily things can go wrong when you put your trust in someone you barely know. It is a story about a first date that went from promising to absolutely terrifying, and it comes to us from a woman named Sarah. Sarah was like a lot of people these days. She was in her early 20s, living in a decent-sized city, and navigating the confusing world of online dating. She would have had her share of bad dates, some awkward, some just plain boring, but nothing that had ever truly scared her. Not until Mark. She would match with Mark on one of the popular dating apps. Let's call it Connect. His profile was pretty impressive. He was a few years older than her, maybe late 20s, with a confident but not arrogant smile in his pictures. He worked in something vague but respectable, like financial consulting, and his bio talked about hiking, photography, and finding hidden gems off the beaten path. He seemed adventurous, intelligent, and honestly pretty handsome. Their initial conversations were great. He was witty, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in what Sarah had to say. He remembered details she would mention days earlier, which she found charming. It felt like a real connection, not just the usual superficial swiping. After about a week of texting and a couple phone calls that left her laughing, he suggested they finally meet up for dinner. "I know this incredible spot," he would texted. "It is this amazing farm to table place, super rustic, but the food is out of this world. It is a bit of a drive, maybe an hour or so outside the city. But trust me, it is absolutely worth it. It is really secluded, a true hidden gem." Sarah paused. An hour outside the city for a first date. A tiny little alarm bell, no bigger than a gnat, buzzed in the back of her mind. It felt a little intense. But then she thought about how much she would enjoy talking to him, how exciting he made it sound. She pictured a cozy, candlelit restaurant in the countryside, a unique experience. Plus, she was a bit of an adventurous spirit herself, or at least she liked to think she was. She did not want to seem boring or unspontaneous. So, she pushed the tiny alarm bell down. "Sounds amazing," she replied. "Count me in." "What time?" He suggested he pick her up around 6 p.m. the following Saturday. She agreed. She told her best friend, Maya, about the date, mentioning the drive. Maya, being a little more cautious, raised an eyebrow. An hour drive for a first date. That is a lot. "Sarah, are you sure about this guy? He seems really great." Maya, Sarah had said, and he made it sound like this super exclusive, romantic spot. Like a real experience, you know? "Besides, I will have my phone. I will text you when we get there." Maya still looked skeptical, but Sarah was already caught up in the excitement. She spent the better part of Saturday afternoon picking out the perfect outfit, doing her hair, and doing her makeup. She was genuinely looking forward to it. Mark pulled up to her apartment building right on time, in a sleek, dark SUV that looked brand new. He got out, walked around, and opened the passenger door for her, a gesture that felt old-fashioned and charming. In person, he was even more attractive than his photos, and his smile was genuinely warm. "Hey, Sarah," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "Ready for an adventure?" "Ready as I will ever be," she replied, a genuine smile on her face. She slid into the comfortable leather seat, the interior smelling faintly of new car and a subtle, pleasant cologne. The first part of the drive was perfectly normal. They chatted easily, picking up where their texts had left off. He asked about her day, told her a funny story about his dog, and made her laugh several times. They drove out of the city, onto the highway, and the urban sprawl slowly gave way to suburban neighborhoods, then open fields and scattered farmhouses. The sun, a warm orange, began its slow descent towards the horizon. About 45 minutes in, Sarah started to feel that tiny alarm bell again, a little louder this time. She glanced at the GPS on her phone, which was still showing them moving away from any major towns. "So, how much further is this place?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Mark chuckled, his eyes on the road. "Almost there. It is worth the wait. Trust me. You are going to love it. It has got this incredible view of the sunset, too. Perfect for a first date." He made it sound so romantic that she pushed her unease back down. Maybe she was just being paranoid. She was used to city life. She probably just was not used to being out in the country. But as they continued, the road grew narrower. The houses became fewer and farther between, and the trees started to close in around them. The last vestiges of sunlight were fading fast, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and fiery orange, but casting long, eerie shadows across the landscape. The phone signal bars on her screen had started to fluctuate, then dropped entirely. "Shoot," Sarah muttered, tapping her phone. Lost my signal out here. Mark glanced at her, a quick, almost imperceptible flicker in his eyes. Yeah, that happens out here. Good to disconnect sometimes, right? Get away from all the noise. He smiled, but it felt a little forced this time. Sarah tried to laugh along, but a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. She tried to subtly open her messaging app again, just to see if a stray bar of signal might pop up, but nothing. Just the dreaded no service message. They kept driving. An hour turned into an hour and a half. The road they were on was now barely paved, gravel and dirt kicking up behind the tires. The trees were dense on either side, a thick, impenetrable wall of dark green that seemed to swallow the last of the twilight. There were no streetlights, no other cars, just the hum of Mark's engine and the growing silence inside the SUV. Mark, Sarah said, her voice a little more strained than she intended. Seriously, where are we? This is way more than an hour, and there is nothing out here. He did not immediately answer. He just kept driving, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on the ribbon of road ahead. The charming smile was gone, replaced by a neutral, almost blank expression. The change was subtle, but it hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her heart started to pound. Mark, she repeated, louder this time. I am getting a little freaked out. Where is this restaurant? He finally spoke, his voice lower, less friendly. Just a little further. It is really off the grid. Off the grid. That phrase, which had sounded adventurous earlier, now sounded menacing. She looked around desperately, but there was nothing. Just trees and the deepening gloom of night. The air in the car felt thick, suffocating. She noticed a dark duffel bag in the back seat, half hidden under a jacket. It looked heavy, sturdy. A new wave of fear washed over her. Then he slowed down, turning off the gravel road onto what could only be described as a dirt track. It was barely wide enough for the SUV, overgrown with weeds and brambles. A rusty, leaning sign, barely visible in the fading light, read private property. No trespassing. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Mark stopped the car. I am serious. This is not okay. Her voice was shaking now. He ignored her, driving slowly, carefully, deeper into the woods. The trees grew even denser here, forming a canopy that blocked out what little starlight might have penetrated. It was pitch black, save for the SUV's headlights cutting through the darkness. The silence was absolute, broken only by the crunch of tires on dirt and the frantic pounding of her own heart. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only another few minutes, the trees thinned slightly, revealing a clearing. And in the middle of that clearing, bathed in the harsh glare of the headlights, stood a cabin. It was not a rustic, charming, farm-to-table restaurant. It was an old, dilapidated shack. The paint was peeling, the windows were dark and looked boarded up in places, and the porch sagged precariously. It looked abandoned, desolate, and utterly terrifying. Mark brought the SUV to a complete stop. He cut the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, a thick, heavy blanket that seemed to press in on Sarah from all sides. The only sound was the frantic thumping of her own heartbeat in her ears. Mark, she whispered, her voice barely audible. What is this place? This is not a restaurant. He turned to her then, and the charming mask was completely gone. His eyes, in the dim light from the dashboard, were cold, flat, and devoid of any warmth. His mouth was a thin, hard line. No, Sarah, he said, his voice low and chillingly calm. It is not a restaurant. Pure, unadulterated terror seized her. Every fiber of her being screamed danger. She fumbled for the door handle, her hands clammy and shaking, but he was faster. He reached across, his arm a blur, and pressed a button. A soft click echoed through the silent car as the doors locked. Hey, she yelled, her voice cracking. She tried the handle again, pulling frantically, but it was solid. Locked. Relax. Sarah, he said, and there was a strange, almost predatory calm in his tone. No need to be so dramatic. Dramatic, she shrieked, her voice rising in panic. We are 2 hours into the middle of nowhere, in front of some creepy shack, and you just locked me in your car. What do you want? He leaned back, a faint, unsettling smile playing on his lips. I told you, I like hidden gems. And you, Sarah, are a very rare gem. A beautiful one. His eyes raked over her, and she felt a wave of nausea. His gaze was not admiring, it was appraising, like a collector looking at an object. Let me out, Mark. Right now, she demanded, tried to sound firm, but her voice betrayed her. She was terrified. He slowly reached into the console between them. Sarah's eyes widened, her heart hammering against her ribs. Was he reaching for a knife? A gun? What was he going to do? He pulled out a small, worn, leather-bound journal and a pen. He opened it, flipping through pages filled with neat, precise handwriting. You know, Sarah, he began, ignoring her pleas. I have been looking for someone like you for a long time. Someone with that spark, that genuine innocence. It is hard to find these days. He looked at her, and his smile widened, but it was not a friendly smile. It was a terrifying, calculating grin. Most people are so jaded, so predictable. But you are different. You have that look in your eyes. That moment of pure, unadulterated fear. It is exquisite. Her blood ran cold. Pure, unadulterated fear. He was enjoying this. He was enjoying her fear. What are you talking about? She stammered, trying to keep her voice steady. Her mind was racing, desperately trying to find an escape. Any escape. He tapped the journal. My work. My art, you could say. I capture moments. True, unfiltered emotion. And there is nothing quite like the raw, primal fear of someone realizing they are completely, utterly helpless. He closed the journal with a soft thud. And you, Sarah, are going to be my next masterpiece. He reached for the door handle again, but this time he was not locking it. He was unlocking his side. That was her chance. Adrenaline surged through her veins, overriding the terror for a split second. As he opened his door, she flung herself across the center console, clawing at his arm, screaming at the top of her lungs. She did not know what she was doing, just that she had to get out. He grunted in surprise, momentarily thrown off balance. He tried to grab her, but she was too quick, too desperate. Her fingernails raked across his face, leaving angry red lines. He roared in pain and fury. She scrambled out the passenger door, falling onto the dirt track, scraping her knees and palms. She did not care. She did not even feel it. All she knew was she had to run. Hey, he yelled, his voice echoing through the silent woods. Get back here. Sarah, she did not look back. She pushed herself up, her muscles screaming, and bolted into the darkness of the woods. The trees were a thick, terrifying maze, branches snagging at her clothes. Roots threatened to trip her with every frantic step. The ground was uneven, covered in fallen leaves and unseen debris. Behind her, she heard his door slam shut. Then, the crunch of his boots on the dirt, growing closer. He was coming after her. Sarah, you can't hide. His voice, now laced with chilling menace, sliced through the night. It is useless. I know these woods. She ran blindly, fueled by pure, desperate terror. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she could not stop. She could hear him crashing through the undergrowth behind her, closer than she wanted to believe. She knew she was not fast enough. He was bigger, stronger, and he probably knew this area like the back of his hand. She needed to hide. She needed to disappear. Ahead, she saw a large, gnarled oak tree, its ancient trunk wider than her outstretched arms, its roots twisting out of the ground like thick, dark veins. There was a small hollow at its base, partially obscured by thick bushes. It was a long shot, but it was all she had. With a final burst of energy, She dove towards it, scrambling behind the bushes, squeezing herself into the hollow. She pulled her knees to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible, trying to disappear into the shadows. She held her breath, her heart pounding so violently she thought he must surely hear it. Seconds stretched into an eternity. She heard him stop, his heavy breathing audible just a few yards away. "Sarah," he called out, his voice no longer angry, but eerily calm, almost playful. Come out, wherever you are. This is not a game you can win." He was close, too close. She could hear the rustle of leaves as he moved, slowly, deliberately, searching. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face, silently begging for him to pass by, to miss her. She heard a twig snap right beside her hiding spot. Her body tensed, ready to scream, ready to fight, ready to die. Then he moved away. She heard his footsteps receding, slowly circling, calling her name. "Sarah, do not make this harder than it has to be. I just want to talk. We can still have that dinner. It is a bit cold now, but I have a fire pit at the cabin. It will be cozy." The casualness of his tone was more horrifying than his anger. He was not just a kidnapper, he was a predator playing with his prey. He was enjoying every second of her terror. She stayed absolutely still, not daring to move a muscle, not daring to breathe too loudly. Minutes passed, then more minutes. The sound of his searching grew fainter, moving deeper into the woods. But she knew he had not given up. He was just trying to flush her out. The cold night air seeped into her clothes, making her shiver uncontrollably. Her muscles cramped from holding such a rigid position. But she could not move. She could not make a sound. After what felt like an hour, the woods grew eerily silent again. Too silent. Had he left? Had he given up? Or was he just waiting, lurking, listening for her to make a move? She could not stay there forever. She had to try something. She slowly, painstakingly, began to crawl out from her hiding spot, inch by agonizing inch. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent a jolt of terror through her. She peeked out, straining her eyes in the oppressive darkness. Nothing, just the endless, looming trees. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she started to move, not running this time, but walking as quietly as she could, trying to put as much distance between herself and the cabin as possible. She did not know which way was back to the main road, but she hoped if she just kept moving in one direction, she would eventually hit something. She walked what felt like an eternity, her bare arms and legs scraped and bruised by branches, her shoes filled with dirt and pebbles. The moon, a sliver of white, finally broke through the canopy, casting weak, ghostly light through the trees, making the shadows dance and play tricks on her eyes. Every rustle, every hoot of an owl made her jump. Then she saw it, through a break in the trees, a faint, flickering light in the distance. Hope, sharp and agonizing, pierced through her fear. It was not the cabin. It was in the opposite direction. It had to be a house, or a road. She pushed herself harder, her exhaustion temporarily forgotten, stumbling through the undergrowth towards the light. As she got closer, she realized it was not a house. It was a single dim streetlight, illuminating a narrow, paved road. A road. A real road. She burst out of the tree line, onto the asphalt, breathing heavily, tears of relief and exhaustion streaming down her face. She looked both ways. No cars. No signs of Mark. Just the empty road stretching into the darkness and the single buzzing streetlight. She started walking, not caring which direction, just away from the woods, away from the cabin, away from Mark. She limped, her body aching, her mind reeling. Every shadow, every distant sound made her jump. After what felt like miles, she saw another light, much brighter this time. Headlights. A car was coming. Her instinct screamed at her to hide, to run, to not trust anyone. But her body was giving out. Her voice was hoarse from screaming and from the dry, dusty air. She had no choice. She stumbled into the middle of the road, waving her arms frantically, yelling, "Help! Please, help me!" The car slowed, its headlights blinding her. It was an older pickup truck, a rusty, beat-up thing. The driver, a weatherman with a kind face, leaned out the window, his expression a mix of concern and alarm. "Whoa, easy there, miss. Are you okay? What happened?" Sarah collapsed against the side of his truck, sobbing uncontrollably. He tried to the cabin mark. He tried to kill me. The man, whose name she later learned was Frank, was a retired farmer heading home from a late shift at a nearby plant. He listened patiently, his face growing grimmer with every word. He helped her into his truck, wrapping her in a spare blanket he kept on the seat, and drove her to the nearest police station, which was about another 20 minutes away. The police took her statement, and an officer drove her back out to the dirt track. But by then, it was too late. The cabin was dark, silent, and empty. There were no signs of Mark, no sign of his SUV. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. They searched the area, but found nothing concrete. No evidence of anyone having lived there recently. No tools, no duffel bag. Just an old, dilapidated cabin in the middle of nowhere. They told her they would open an investigation, that they would look for him. They had her describe Mark in detail, gave her a list of resources for trauma and counseling. But Sarah knew deep down that he was gone. He was a ghost in the woods, a predator who had melted back into the shadows. Sarah never went on a dating app again. The experience left her with scars that ran far deeper than the scrapes and bruises she got that night. Every time she drove past a wooded area, her heart would seize up. Every time a car pulled up behind her too closely, she felt a surge of panic. And every time she met someone new, that little alarm bell in her head was not just a gnat anymore, it was a blaring siren. She was lucky she escaped. But the memory of Mark's cold eyes, his chilling smile, and the absolute terror being hunted in the dark woods would stay with her forever. She learned the hard way that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are not the ones in the movies, they're the ones who look perfectly normal on a dating app, offering you a hidden gem of an experience, only to drive you 2 hours into the middle of nowhere where no one can hear you scream. And that is the story of Sarah's terrifying first date. It is a chilling reminder to always trust your gut, no matter how small that alarm bell might seem. Stay safe out there, and I will see you next time. All right, so picture this. I was just like anyone else, right? Swiping through Connect, trying to navigate that whole confusing, sometimes soul-crushing world of online dating. You know the drill. Endless profiles, awkward intros, the occasional gem that turns out to be a total dud in person. But then I matched with Mark. And let me tell you, Mark seemed different. He was handsome, in that rugged, outdoorsy way, with a smile that just radiated warmth. His profile was full of pictures of him hiking, kayaking, traveling to some pretty exotic-looking places. He seemed genuinely adventurous, which I liked, and our conversations. Man, they were great. We talked for hours, texting back and forth, laughing at each other's stupid jokes, finding common ground on everything from obscure indie bands to our shared love for spicy food. It felt easy, natural, like we would known each other for ages. So when he suggested a first date, I was genuinely excited. And his idea, an incredible farm-to-table spot, a hidden gem about an hour outside the city. He described it as having this amazing atmosphere, locally sourced ingredients, the whole 9 yards. A tiny alarm bell buzzed in the back of my mind. I will admit, an hour outside the city for a first date, that is a bit of commitment. A bit isolated. But I pushed it down. I wanted to seem spontaneous, you know? Not some city slicker too afraid to venture off the beaten path. Plus, the idea of a unique experience, something different from a usual noisy bar or generic restaurant, was really appealing. I remember talking to my friend, Sarah, about a couple of days before the date. She was always my sounding board for these kinds of things. "An hour out," she said, raising an eyebrow over her coffee mug. "For a first date. That is bold, dude." "I know, right?" I chuckled, trying to sound nonchalant. But he made it sound so cool. Like this super exclusive, rustic place. And our conversations have been so good. I figured, why not? Sarah just gave me that look. The one that said, "I am not going to tell you what to do, but I am also not entirely on board with this. Just text me when you get there, okay, and text me when you are leaving, and maybe share your location." I rolled my eyes, but I knew she was right to be cautious. We have all heard the stories. Yeah, Mom, I got it. The day of the date rolled around, and I was actually pretty hyped. I picked out a nice but not too fancy outfit. I double-checked my phone was charged, made sure I had a full tank of gas. You know, all the usual preparations. Mark had given me the address, and it was indeed way out there, past the suburbs, past the big box stores, then past the smaller towns that gradually thinned out into farmland. The drive started out fine. I put on a playlist, cruised along. The sun was starting to dip, painting the sky in these incredible oranges and purples. It was beautiful, honestly. But as I got further and further, the road started to narrow. The street lights disappeared. It was just me, my headlights cutting through the growing darkness, and endless fields on either side. My phone signal, which had been perfectly fine, started to flicker. Then it dropped completely. Great. I thought. Just great. Sarah's gonna kill me if I get lost out here. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw it. A small, unlit sign on the side of the road, barely visible in my headlights, that simply read the old mill. Below it, an arrow pointing down a long gravel driveway. I took a deep breath, turned off the main road, and started slowly bumping my way down the drive. The trees here were thick, ancient-looking things, their branches arching overhead like skeletal fingers, blocking out what little natural light was left. It felt like driving into a tunnel. At the end of the drive, a building slowly materialized out of the gloom. It was an old mill, or at least it looked like one. Stone and dark wood with a heavy, rustic feel. There were a few other cars in the small parking lot, maybe 4 or 5. Not exactly bustling, but not completely deserted either. A single, dim lantern hung by the heavy wooden front door, casting a weak, flickering glow. I parked, took another deep breath, and stepped out of my car. The air was cool and still, carrying the scent of damp earth and something else. Something vaguely metallic, almost like old iron. Or maybe that was just my imagination. As I walked toward the entrance, the heavy door swung open, and there he was, Mark, looking even better than his pictures, if that was possible. He had on a casual button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up, and jeans. He flashed that easy smile, and for a moment, all my apprehension melted away. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "You made it. I was starting to wonder if you got lost. Signal out here is terrible." "I know. Tell me about it." I laughed, feeling a little more at ease. My phone basically gave up about 10 miles back. He chuckled. "Yeah, it is part of the charm. No distractions. Come on in. I got us a table." The interior of the old mill was interesting. It was dimly lit, mostly by candles and a few strategically placed lanterns. The walls were exposed stone. The floor was wide plank wood. There was a large, roaring fireplace in one corner, which was nice. A few other tables were occupied, but it was far from full. The clientele seemed to be mostly couples, hushed conversations, a sort of intimate, almost reverent atmosphere. It felt less like a restaurant and more like a secret club. We were led to a table in a cozy nook away from the other patrons. It was nice, private. The server, a quiet young woman with surprisingly pale eyes, handed us menus that were printed on thick, handmade paper. Everything sounded delicious, locally sourced produce, artisanal cheeses, game meats. It was exactly what Mark had described. For the first hour or so, everything was great. Mark was an engaging conversationalist, just as he would have been over text. We talked about our lives, our dreams, our past experiences. He told me stories about his travels, and I found myself genuinely captivated. He listened intently when I spoke, making eye contact, making me feel like I was the only person in the room. He was charming, attentive, and funny. I remember thinking, okay, maybe Sarah was overreacting. This guy is actually really great. We ordered our food. I got the roasted duck. He got the venison stew and a bottle of a local red wine. The wine was robust and smooth, and after a couple of glasses, I was feeling even more relaxed, the earlier jitters completely gone. The food arrived, beautifully presented, and tasted incredible. Seriously, one of the best meals I would have had in a long time. It was during a lull in the conversation, after we would finished our main courses and were waiting for dessert, that it happened. Mark was reaching across the table to pour me another glass of wine. As he extended his arm, his sleeve, which had been casually rolled up to his forearm, slipped down a little, and there it was, on the inside of his left forearm, just below the elbow, a tattoo. My breath caught in my throat. The wine glass clinked softly against the bottle as my hand froze. My eyes fixated on it, heart suddenly hammering in my chest like a trapped bird. It was a very specific tattoo, not some generic tribal design or a random symbol. This was intricate. It was a depiction of a raven, perched on a gnarled, leafless branch, with a single, blood-red rose clutched in its beak. The style was unique, almost gothic, with fine lines and subtle shading that made the raven's feathers look incredibly detailed, almost iridescent in the dim candlelight. The rose, too, was rendered with striking realism, its petals unfurling, the deep crimson standing out against the bird's dark form. And I knew that tattoo. I knew it intimately, because my ex-girlfriend, Chloe, had the exact same one, in the exact same spot. Chloe had gotten about 6 months before she disappeared. We would have been together for 3 years, and that tattoo was a big deal to her. She would spend months designing it, working with an artist to get every detail perfect. It was not just a cool design, it had a story. The raven represented freedom and mystery, she said, and the rose, love and passion, even in darkness. She had told me, and only me, that it was a symbol of her belief in finding beauty even in the most desolate places. It was deeply personal. Chloe had vanished without a trace almost a year ago. One day she was there, the next she was gone. Her car was found abandoned on the side of a highway, her apartment untouched. No note, no calls, no activity on her bank accounts or social media. Just gone. The police had investigated, of course, but they found nothing. It was like she would simply cease to exist. It had torn me apart. And now, here it was, on Mark's arm, the exact same tattoo. My mind raced, tried to find a rational explanation. Coincidence? Impossible. The design was too specific, too unique. Maybe he knew Chloe. But why would not he have mentioned it? Why would not he have said something like, "Hey, that tattoo reminds me of someone I know," or "I got this design from a friend"? My eyes darted from the tattoo to Mark's face. He was smiling, oblivious, still pouring the wine. Or was he? Was that a flicker in his eyes? A subtle shift in his expression that suggested he knew I would seen it. "Everything all right?" he asked, his smile still in place, but now it seemed a little too wide, a little too fixed. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh, a dry, hollow sound that barely escaped my throat. "Oh, yeah, I am fine. Just admiring your tattoo. It is really cool." I tried to keep my voice light, casual, but my hands were trembling, and I could feel a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. He glanced down at his arm, then back at me. His smile did not waver, but his eyes were suddenly different. There was something in them now, a depth, a knowingness that had not been there before. It was like a mask had slipped. This one, he said, turning his arm slightly so I could get a better look. Yeah, I like it. It is special to me. He paused, his gaze lingering on mine. Got it a while back. It represents something important. My heart pounded even harder. Special to me. Represents something important. Was he toying with me? Was this some sick game? It is. Really detailed. I managed. Try to sound genuinely interested, trying to push down the rising panic. What is the story behind it? He leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. He took a sip of his wine, his eyes never leaving mine. Well, he began, his voice dropping slightly, becoming a low, almost hypnotic murmur. It is about finding beauty in the desolate. The raven, you see, it is often associated with darkness, with mystery, but it is also intelligent, adaptable. And the rose, a symbol of love, of passion. Even in the bleakest of places, there can be something beautiful, something worth holding on to. My blood ran cold. Those were almost Chloe's exact words. Not just the general meaning, but the phrasing, the specific interpretation. It could not be a coincidence. It absolutely could not. A wave of nausea washed over me. I felt like I was going to throw up the exquisite duck and the fine wine. This was not a date. This was something else entirely. This was a trap. That is, a beautiful interpretation. I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to hide the terror that was now clawing at my throat. Did you design it yourself? He just smiled, a slow, unsettling smile that did not quite reach his eyes. In a way, he said, it was inspired by someone very inspiring. My mind was a whirlwind of frantic thoughts. Get out now. But how? I am an hour from the city. No phone signal. He knows where I parked. What if he is not alone? What if this whole place is involved? The quiet atmosphere of the restaurant suddenly felt menacing. The hushed conversations sounded like whispers. The dim lighting felt oppressive. The pale-eyed server who'd been so quiet earlier now seemed to be watching us from across the room. I think I need to use the restroom. I stammered, pushing my chair back a little too quickly. It scraped loudly against a wooden floor, making a harsh sound in the otherwise quiet room. A few heads turned. Mark's smile tightened. Of course, he said, his voice still calm, but with an edge I had not noticed before. It is just down that hall, past the kitchen entrance. He gestured vaguely with his wine glass. Do not get lost. His eyes held mine for a moment, and in that moment, I saw it clearly. Not charm, not warmth, but something cold, predatory. A warning. I practically ran to the hallway he would indicated. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The hallway was even darker than the dining room, lit only by a single flickering bare bulb. It smelled faintly of something metallic again, stronger this time. I passed a heavy, unmarked wooden door that I assumed was the kitchen entrance. A low hum emanated from behind it, like some kind of machinery. I burst into the small, single-stall restroom. It was surprisingly clean, but still had that rustic, old building feel. I locked the door behind me, leaning against it, trying to catch my breath. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to clear my head. Think. What do I do? I could not just walk out. He would stop me. He would probably follow me. I needed a plan. I pulled out my phone. Still no signal. I tried calling Sarah anyway, just in case. Nothing. I opened my Maps app. It showed my location, a little blued in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by blank grayness. No roads, no landmarks, just an empty expanse. Great. Offline maps clearly had not loaded this area. My eyes scanned the small bathroom, looking for anything, any clue, any way out. The window was tiny, high up, and covered with a thick iron grate. No escape there. As I turned to face the door, my gaze fell on a small, framed picture hanging on the wall. It was a faded, sepia-toned photograph of the mill itself, probably from decades ago. Below it, a small plaque. I leaned closer to read the tiny script. The Old Mill Est, 1898. Originally a grain mill, then a timber mill. Reopened as the Old Mill Restaurant in 1982 by the Miller family. Current proprietors, the Miller family. Miller family. Mark. Miller. Could it be? Was this his family's place? That would explain a lot. The isolation, the lack of signal, the way he seemed to own the place. Suddenly a thought struck me. Chloe. Her car found abandoned. What if she had not just disappeared? What if she would have been brought here? A chilling tremor ran down my spine. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide with terror. I looked like a cornered animal. I unlocked the door and peered out into the dim hallway. Empty. I had to get out. I could not go back to the table. I had to get to my car. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Okay. Plan walk out, pretend everything is fine, make a beeline for my car, and drive like hell. Do not look back. I started walking, trying to keep my pace normal, but my legs felt like lead. As I approached the dining room entrance, I could see Mark at our table. He was not looking at me. He was looking at his phone, a slight frown on his face. Good. Maybe he is distracted. I tried to walk past the table, towards the main entrance. I could feel his eyes on me, even without looking. Leaving so soon, he asked, his voice cutting to the quiet like a knife. I stopped, forcing myself to turn around, forcing a smile. Oh, no, just thought I would get some fresh air. It is a bit warm in here. It was a lie. The air was cool. He slowly put his phone down. His smile was gone. His eyes were cold, hard. Nonsense. It is quite comfortable. Why do not you come back and we can have dessert? I ordered the AP bow, crumble. It is their specialty. Actually, I said, trying to keep my voice from trembling. I just remembered I have an early start tomorrow. I really should get going. He stood up slowly. He was taller than me, and the way he moved, with that quiet, deliberate grace, made him seem even more imposing. An early start, he chuckled, but there was no humor in it. That is a shame. I was having such a good time. We were having such a good time. Were not we? He started to walk towards me, slowly, deliberately. The few other patrons in the restaurant seemed oblivious, lost in their own conversations. Or perhaps they were just very good at pretending to be. The pale-eyed server was nowhere to be seen. Look, Mark, I said, backing away slowly, my eyes darting toward the front door. I really do have to go. Thanks for dinner. It was memorable, memorable. Indeed, he said, and now he was only a few feet from me. His voice was no longer warm and charming. It was flat, chilling, but you can't leave yet. We have not even really started. What are you talking about? I tried to sound angry, but it came out as a desperate squeak. He reached out, his hand closing around my arm with surprising strength. His grip was like iron. You saw it. Did not you? He whispered, his face close to mine. His breath smelled faintly of wine and something else. Something sweet and cloying, like decay. The tattoo. You recognized it. My heart leaped into my throat. I do not know what you are talking about. I lied, trying to pull away. But his grip was too strong. He chuckled, a low, humorless sound. Oh, I think you do. You knew Chloe, did not you? She talked about you. Said you were persistent. Chloe. He knew Chloe. And she talked about me. My mind reeled. This was worse than I could have imagined. Let go of me. Mark. I snarled, trying to put some force behind my voice. I started to struggle, trying to twist out of his grasp. His eyes narrowed. The charming facade was completely gone now, replaced by something cold, utterly devoid of emotion. You should not have come here, he said, his voice a low growl. Nobody leaves the old mill unless I say so. He started to drag me back toward our table, away from the front door. I panicked. I screamed, a loud, desperate, terrified scream that echoed to the quiet restaurant. And then, just as quickly as it started, it stopped. The other diners, who had momentarily looked up, now turned away, resuming their conversations as if nothing had happened. The pale-eyed server appeared from a back room, carrying a tray of dirty dishes, her face completely blank, as if she had not heard a thing. It was like I was invisible, or they were all in on it. Mark's grip tightened, almost crushing my arm. Do not make a scene, he hissed, his lips barely moving. It won't do you any good. I lashed out, kicking him hard in the shin. He grunted, momentarily loosening his grip. It was all I needed. I tore my arm free and bolted, not toward the front door, because he was blocking it, but towards the hallway where the restroom was, towards the kitchen. It was a desperate, illogical move, but I had to get away from him. I burst through the unmarked wooden door that I would assume was the kitchen. The hum I would heard earlier was louder here. The air was thick with a metallic smell, overpowering now. It was not just old iron. It was blood. The kitchen was brightly lit, a stark contrast to the rest of the restaurant. But it was not a normal kitchen. There were stainless steel counters, industrial-size equipment, but also other things. Large hooks hanging from the ceiling, a heavy-duty meat saw, a grinder, and on one of the counters, a collection of knives, gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. But what truly made my stomach lurch, what made me gag, was the sight of what looked like a walk-in freezer door, slightly ajar, with a faint, reddish light spilling out from inside. And next to it, on another stainless steel table, covered by a blood-stained sheet, was a shape. A human shape. I gasped, stumbling backwards, my hand flying my mouth to stifle a scream, looking for something. Mark's voice, calm and deadly, came from behind me. I spun around. He was standing in the doorway, blocking my escape. He no longer had that charming smile. His face was a mask of cold, calculating menace. In his hand, he held one of the long, gleaming knives from the counter. You are not leaving, he said, his voice flat. Not until you have joined the others. He gestured vaguely toward the walk-in freezer. My mind went blank with terror. The others. Chloe. Was she? In there. Was this what farm to table really meant for him? I did not think. I just reacted. My eyes darted around the room. A heavy, cast iron pan on the stove. I grabbed it, hefting its weight in my trembling hands. Stay away from me. I screamed, my voice raw with terror. He laughed, a chilling, mirthless sound. You think that is going to stop me? He took a step forward, the knife glinting. I swung the pan with all my might. It connected with his arm, the one holding the knife, with a sickening thud. He cried out, dropping the knife with clatter. It skittered across the floor, coming to rest near the walk-in freezer door. He recoiled, clutching his arm, his face contorted in pain and rage. This was my chance. I did not hesitate. I threw the pan at him, then dove past him out of the kitchen and back into the dim hallway. I could hear him yelling, cursing, behind me. I sprinted through the dining room, not caring who saw, who heard. I could hear Mark's heavy footsteps thudding behind me. He was fast. The front door. It was still there. I lunged for it, fumbling with the heavy latch. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip it. "You are not going anywhere," Mark roared, his voice right behind me. I finally managed to unlatch the door and yank it open. The cool night air hit my face, a blessed relief. I burst out into the gravel parking lot, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. My car. Where was my car? I scanned the few vehicles in the lot. There, the silver sedan. I ran, hearing Mark's footsteps gaining on me. He was close. So close. I reached my car, fumbling for the keys in my pocket. My hands were slick with sweat. I could hear his ragged breathing right behind me. "Give up," he snarled. "You can't escape." I finally got the key fob, jamming it into the lock, hearing the satisfying thunk of the doors unlocking. I yanked the driver's side door open, practically throwing myself inside. Just as I slammed the door shut, I saw him, his face, contorted with fury, pressed against the window. His hand slammed against the glass, making me jump. He was still holding something. Not the knife from the kitchen. This was a heavy, rusty wrench he must have grabbed from somewhere. I did not waste another second. I jammed the key into the ignition, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped it. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. I slammed the car into reverse, tires spitting gravel. Mark stumbled backward, barely avoiding being hit. I floored it, turning the wheel hard. The car fishtailed on the loose gravel, but I did not care. I just needed to get out. Get away. I sped down the long, dark driveway, the ancient trees rushing past like shadowy specters. I could see Mark in my rear-view mirror, standing in the middle of the parking lot, silhouetted against the dim light of the mill, watching me go. He did not chase me. He just stood there, a chilling, still figure, as if content to let me go, knowing I could not truly escape what I would see. When I finally hit the main road, my hands were still clenched white-knuckled on the steering wheel. I did not slow down until I saw the first streetlights of civilization, miles and miles away. My phone signal flickered back on. I pulled over to the side of the road, shaking uncontrollably, and immediately called 911. My voice was hoarse, choked with tears and terror, as I tried to explain what had happened. A farm-to-table restaurant, a missing ex-girlfriend, a tattoo, a kitchen full of horrors. It sounded insane, even to me. The police took me seriously enough to send officers out. I led them back to the old mill. But by the time we got there, it was deserted. The few cars that had been in the parking lot were gone. The lantern by the door was out. The building was dark, silent, and utterly empty. They searched the place, of course. They found the kitchen. They found the industrial equipment, the hooks, the meat saw, but the table with the blood-stained sheet, gone. The slightly ajar freezer door, closed and locked. When they finally got open, it was empty, save for some frozen vegetables and cuts of meat that looked perfectly normal, like a legitimate restaurant's freezer. There was no sign of Mark or anyone else. No sign of Chloe. No evidence of anything I had seen. It was as if the horrors I would witness had been conjured from thin air, only for me. The police were sympathetic, but skeptical. They noted my highly agitated state, the lack of concrete evidence. They took my statement, but I could tell they thought I was either delusional or had made it all up. Maybe a bad reaction to the wine, they suggested. A nightmare brought on by stress. I knew what I saw. I knew what I felt. The terror was too real, the tattoo too specific, the words Mark had said too chillingly familiar. I never went on another online date again. I still have nightmares about that night. The long, dark drive, the metallic smell, the cold, dead look in Mark's eyes, and the tattoo. Always the tattoo. To this day, Mark has never been found. The old mill remains standing, dark and silent, on that isolated road. Every now and then, I drive past it just to see, And every time it is the same: empty, abandoned. But I know what happened there. And I know that somewhere out there, Mark is still out there, possibly looking for his next inspiring muse. And I can only wonder how many other hidden gems like the old mill are out there, waiting for the next unsuspecting person to come seeking a unique experience, only to find themselves on the menu.